Chapter 1156. Qin Sheng didn't see anyone else in the Qin family, except for Mr. Gong's son and Zhao Anji. He knew Zhao Anji. She had been in Tsingtao recently and seemed to have some trivial things to deal with. Qin Sheng was surprised that he didn't see Mr. Gong's son. Later, he heard from his uncle that Mr. Gong's son hadn't been back for a long time and had been living a comfortable life in his hometown in Taihu. For so many years, Qin Chang'an only had two trusted subordinates. One was Mr. Ding, who was the leader of the Chang'an system, and the other was Mr. Gong's son, who never left his side. Compared with Mr. Ding, who left out of disappointment with Qin Chang'an and the Chang and system, Mr. Gong's son was really loyal to Qin Chang'an and the Qin family. It was not until the Chang and system collapsed, Qin Chang'an was imprisoned, and Qin Sheng got into trouble that he left the Qin family and gradually weakened his influence in the Qin family. Mr. Gong's son knew himself well. After all, after Qin Changxing came back, Qin Changxing was the real controller of the Qin family. He didn't have much contact with Qin Changxing. No matter how much Qin Changxing trusted him, the resources of the Qin family were controlled by him, which was a taboo. Therefore, Mr. Gong's son left the Qin family. However, if the Qin family needed anything, Mr. Gong's son would do as Qin Changxing instructed. When Qin Sheng left the Qin family's new company, he remembered the name of the company. Sinan Holding Group. Sinan Peace of Mind? Or Sinan was the new Chang'an system. Based on Mr. Ding's character, it should be the former. Sinan Peace of Mind. Good name. When Qin Sheng returned to the West Mountain Villa of the Qin family, everyone was already waiting in the living room. There were several cars parked in the yard. They should have just come back. Qin Sheng walked into the living room and saw his uncle talking with Mr. Gong's son, while Zhao Anji was chatting with her sisters. The living room was full of laughter and flowers. It was really unbearable to disturb them. Qin Jing saw Qin Sheng first. She quickly stood up and said happily, "Brother, you're back." Upon hearing this, Mr. Gong's son subconsciously looked in the direction of the door. Zhao Anji, on the other hand, had already stood up. When she saw that it was really Qin Sheng, she quickly ran over and hugged him directly. "My Sheng, I finally get to see you," Zhao Anji said excitedly. Qin Sheng also felt a little emotional. It seemed that after coming back this time, these elders had all aged a lot. Whether it was big uncle, big aunt, or small aunt, they were not as energetic as they were 3 years ago. Time really makes people grow old. How I wish I could turn back time. He also hoped that they would age a little slower. Qin Sheng said sincerely, "Auntie, sorry to make you worry. It's okay, it's okay. As long as you're back, it's okay. You don't know how scared I was at that time." "I really didn't know how to explain to your parents and grandfather," Zhao Anji said with red eyes. After all, she was the only elder in the Qin family at that time. Many things in the Qin family were discussed by her and Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng comforted Zhao Anji as he said, "Auntie, this kind of thing will never happen again." Zhao Anji was not so pretentious. She was born in a big family and had a strong character since she was a child. She put away her emotions and looked at Qin Sheng. "I haven't seen you for 3 years. You've changed a lot. You've matured a lot and experienced a lot. You must have suffered a lot in these 3 years." Qin Sheng scratched his head and said, "It's not as bad as you think." That's good, that's good." Zhao Anji patted Qin Sheng's shoulder gently and then said, "Go and meet your Uncle Gong's son. I haven't seen him for more than a year. If you hadn't come back, I don't know when I could see him." Gong's son had already walked out from the sofa. He walked slowly to Qin Sheng and said, "Young master, welcome home. Uncle Gong's son, you've worked hard in the past 3 years," Qin Sheng said respectfully. Whether in front of Mr. Gong's son or Mr. Ding, Qin Sheng could not put on airs. Moreover, he was not such a person. Gong's son chuckled and said, "It's not hard, as long as you come back safely." Qin Sheng looked at Gong's son and shook his head. "Uncle Gong's son, you're old." Gong's son laughed and said, "I'm almost 60 years old. How can I not be old? But no matter how old I am, as long as the Qin family needs anything, I will do my best." Qin Sheng nodded silently as he said, "Uncle Gong's son, I won't say too many polite words. The Qin family is fortunate to have you. We will never let you down." After exchanging pleasantries, Qin Sheng sat on the sofa and chatted with his uncle, aunt, and Uncle Gong's son about their daily life. After that, Qin Changxing stood up and said, "Let's go to the study to talk about business. Since Qin Sheng is back, let's leave the rest to him." Gong's son smiled and nodded. This time, apart from meeting Qin Sheng, he had come back to deal with the remaining trivial matters. A few minutes later, in the study of the Qin family, three men sat facing each other. Qin Changxing and Gong's son looked at each other and smiled as they said, "Gong's son, you do the talking." Gong's son did not refuse. He said slowly, "Qin Sheng, I think you should know what happened in the past 3 years. With the help of your first uncle, the Zhu family, and the Song family, our Qin family got through the difficulties. Of course, we paid a lot. After all, we have to make a trade-off in everything. Compared to our Qin clan, our opponents are much more miserable. Whether it's the sixth master and the Su clan in front of us, or that elder Long behind us, it can be said that all of them are already dead. He was an arrow at the end of its flight. Of course, Master Qin also took a lot of the blame. These were all things that could not be changed. But Master Qin admitted these things. So far, Master Lu is still holding on. It is nothing more than that his ancestors are more generous. But Master Lu's fate has been decided. It depends on how he chooses. You need to talk to him about this matter." Gong's son looked at Qin Sheng very seriously and said. Qin Sheng could roughly understand what was going on. Of course, he still needed to communicate with Uncle Gong's son and eldest uncle about the specific details. Then, Qin Changxing said, "Next, it's about Elder Long. The Qin family was the loser in the dispute 20 years ago, while Elder Long was the biggest winner. Today, after more than 20 years, our Qin family finally has the last laugh. As for the reasons, of course, there are various aspects. Maybe Mr. Ding also told you something. No matter from the capital market or other aspects, we have carried out a comprehensive attack on Elder Long. Of course, these two things are not independent. They are inextricably linked. It has been like this since ancient times. Now Elder Long is already in his twilight years. It can be said that he is struggling at death's door. But he still does not give up on our Qin clan. Otherwise, he would not have dealt with you in Chengdu some time ago. It is a pity that he does not have enough influence to control the overall situation. The internal structure has been torn apart. The most important thing is that the successor that Elder Long values the most has not come back yet. The others are scheming against each other. You know what happened in Chengdu? How did you escape?" Qin Changxing said with interest. Of course, he was extremely happy that the Qin clan could take down this mortal enemy. Qin Sheng said without thinking, "Someone tipped me off." "That's right. Someone tipped me off to Elder Long, so we could take advantage of the situation to cooperate with him. However, it depends on what the other party offers. Of course, they are not qualified to talk about conditions. What they promise us is what kind of benefits. However, even if there are no benefits, as long as we can kill Elder Long by ourselves, we will be satisfied. After all, he is the behind-the-scenes murderer who caused your mother's accident." When Qin Changxing talked about this matter, his eyes were full of viciousness. Therefore, Qin Changxing had not come out for so many years. In fact, it was not because he had seen through the world of mortals, but because the time was not right. When Qin Sheng heard the last sentence, he was also full of murderous intent. He must take revenge by himself. If Elder Long died in this way, it would be too easy for him. Qin Changxing was very satisfied with Qin Sheng's reaction. He said in a deep voice, "I will also leave this matter to you." At this time, Qin Sheng said with a firm look in his eyes, "These things should be done by me." Qin Changxing said with a smile, "Well, the time is ripe. You can choose when to take action. Gong's son will cooperate with you. As for other things, I will support you behind the scenes with the Zhu and Song families." After hearing this, Qin Sheng was very excited. Nothing was more exciting than crushing the enemy. Chapter 11:57. Qin Changxing and the others were all old. Regardless of whether it was Qin Changxing or the others, they were all old. The future of the Qin family was Qin Sheng. These things should be done by Qin Sheng. Moreover, at that time, Qin Sheng had an accident when he was halfway through. Now, it was reasonable for Qin Sheng to continue to finish it. Elder Long, who was struggling at death's door. Sixth uncle, who was struggling. The Qin family only had these two opponents now, and the others were nothing to worry about. Moreover, the Zhu family and the Song family were supporting them. After talking about these things, Gongsun talked to Qin Sheng in detail. In the end, he brought a man in his 30s to Qin Sheng. This man was called Chun Bei Wang. He was from Wuxi, Gongsun's hometown. He was 36 years old and had been in charge of the intelligence work of the Qin family. He had always been low-key and was once Gongsun's right-hand man. Even Qin Chang'an praised him, but he never showed up in public. Even after Qin Sheng came back and took charge of the Qin family, he only helped Gongsun to deal with those trivial things. It was not until Qin Sheng had an accident and Gongsun chose to retire that he started to take full charge of everything. However, he did not report to him, but listened to Qin Changxing's orders. In the past 2 years, Chun Beiwang had gained enough trust from Qin Changxing. The most important thing was that his ability was beyond doubt. Otherwise, Gongsun would not think so highly of him. Now, he handed him over to Qin Sheng to cooperate with Qin Sheng to take charge of the following things. In the beginning, Gongsun wanted to train Brother Wu, and he could see that Brother Wu and Qin Sheng got along well. However, Brother Wu had to go back to Inner Mongolia to inherit the family business. Later, he wanted to help Bahi, especially after Bahi and Nangong got together. Gongsun felt that this was a good combination. However, after Mr. Ding came back, he chose another path for Bahi, and Gongsun had no choice. The reason why he did not choose Chun Beiwang at the beginning was that Chun Beiwang had been by his side for so many years. If he handed him over to Qin Sheng, others would doubt him and think that he was reluctant to let go of the power in the Qin family, even if he retired. Unfortunately, there was no suitable candidate. In the end, he could only choose Chun Beiwang. Fortunately, Chun Beiwang did not disappoint and obtain the Qin family's trust in the end. Only then did Gongsun feel completely at ease. When they were in the study, Gongsun and Qin Changxing had already told Qin Sheng about Chun Beiwang. Qin Sheng roughly understood what was going on. Although he trusted Uncle Gongsun very much, Uncle Gongsun had already made up his mind to leave. Qin Sheng had no way to persuade him to stay. After all, it was time for him to enjoy his life. When Chun Beiwang walked into the study, it was the first time that Qin Sheng saw this man who might be of great help to him in the future. He was not tall and was a little thin. However, he had thick hair and big eyes. He was dressed in ordinary clothes and did not have any temperament at all. Qin Sheng reckoned that he would not take a second look at him even if he walked on the street. However, one couldn't judge a book by its cover. How could this man be so simple if Uncle Gongsun thought so highly of him, and Qin Changxing trusted him so much? The moment Chun Beiwang walked into the study, he knew that he had walked into the power center of the Qin family. Although he had been supported by nobles along the way, Chun Beiwang knew that it was more due to his own efforts and strength. Because in such a family, these were the most important things. He had known Qin Sheng for a long time and had seen him many times. However, this was the first time that they had met each other seriously. At least, it was the first time that Qin Sheng had seen him. Chun Beiwang did not flatter Qin Sheng too much, just like how he treated Qin Changxing. He just greeted him calmly and said, "Young master." Chun Beiwang would only be very respectful when he met Gongsun and Master Qin. Qin Sheng replied with a smile, "Brother Chun, just call me Qin Sheng. In the future, I will probably need your help for many things." Chun Beiwang replied in this way, "These are all things that I should do. If it's within my ability, I will do my best. If it's beyond my ability, I will try my best." Qin Sheng was very satisfied with such an answer. He had a good impression of Chun Beiwang. In fact, the most important thing was that Chun Beiwang had been trusted by his eldest uncle and Uncle Gongsun. However, whether he could become their confidant or not depended on Chun Beiwang's behavior. At this time, Qin Changxing smiled and said, "Beiwang, leave your contact information with Qin Sheng. Later, you can directly report to him." Chun Beiwang nodded and then left sensibly. Chun Beiwang's original name was Chun Beiwang. This name was originally interesting. When he was young, he met a Taoist priest who said that his destiny was in the north. Wang was not as good as Wang, so he changed his name to Wang. It did not occur to him that his words would become a prophecy. In the end, Chun Wang made a fortune in Beijing. It could be seen that fate was sometimes really strange. After talking about what needed to be talked about, Qin Sheng left the study. Qin Changxing and Gong Sun still had something to talk about, probably about Qin Chang'an. After Qin Sheng returned to the living room, he was dragged by the aunt and sister to talk about marriage. They asked about where to get married, the way to get married, the wedding dress, the wedding gift, and so on. Qin Sheng did not expect that there were so many things about marriage. Maybe it was because he had attended few weddings. Qin Sheng was forced to open for business. When it was almost time, he told the aunt and the others that he was going to pick up Song Ruyu from work and then ran away. After Song Ruyu came back, the next thing to do was to hand over her work. This time, she would leave the ministry and work at the grassroots level, which was the result of their discussion. Song Ruyu also agreed to this work arrangement. Song Ruyu told Qin Sheng where to wait for her. After all, Qin Sheng was not that capable to drive directly into Song Ruyu's workplace. Even if he parked at the door, he would be taken away directly for questioning. Although there would not be any problems, it would definitely be troublesome. Across the street, inside the red wall, it was mysterious and awe-inspiring. Qin Sheng stared at the red wall, which was only 3 or 4 meters high, but actually towered into the clouds. He wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. His eldest uncle was most likely to enter this place. Now it was his youngest uncle who was most likely to enter this place. Of course, his youngest uncle was also qualified to enter this place, but his youngest uncle didn't live here for long. If Qin Sheng followed his arrangement with Song Ruyu, maybe one day she would also enter this place. At that time, he would be able to live off a woman, which was quite pleasant to think about. More than 10 minutes later, Song Ruyu, who was dressed in a very ordinary but formal work outfit, arrived. After getting in the car, she said, "Let's go home first. I need to change my clothes. Otherwise, it will be a bit strange if I go out." Qin Sheng laughed and said, "I think it's quite beautiful. What's strange about it?" Song Ruyu turned her head and stared at Qin Sheng for a while. "Has anyone ever told you that you're actually a straight man?" Hearing this, Qin Sheng almost laughed out loud. It seemed that women and men really had different ways of thinking. However, most of the time, Qin Sheng knew how to put himself in other people's shoes. The most important thing was to satisfy the various needs of the woman he liked. It seemed that sometimes he was still a male chauvinist. The home that Song Ruyu mentioned was naturally the #1 courtyard in Daotai. Since Qin Sheng had left, she had been living here. This was a place that belonged to her alone. Qin Sheng didn't think of this at first. It was not until Song Ruyu reminded him that he realized that this was originally his and Song Ruyu's wedding house. It didn't occur to him that Song Ruyu would live here after he left. When Qin Sheng walked into the home of #1 courtyard in Daotai, he instantly felt warm. The atmosphere of life was everywhere. The furnishings in the home were also very down-to-earth. It was not as empty as he had imagined. Song Ruyu took out the slippers that she had prepared for 3 years for Qin Sheng and said, "Finally, this pair of shoes could be worn by someone." Qin Sheng felt somewhat guilty. He stood up and hugged Song Ruyu as he said, "I owe you 3 years. I will use the rest of my life to make it up to you." Song Ruyu said with embarrassment, "It's so cheesy." After that, she went to the master bedroom to change clothes. At first, Qin Sheng didn't know what to do, but then he realized that this was also his home. He was the host, not the guest. There was no need to be restrained. Therefore, Qin Sheng had nothing to do, so he wandered around. First, he went to the kitchen and found that the kitchen was well equipped with all kinds of seasonings. It seemed that Song Ruyu often cooked. Maybe she was already a chef now. Then he ran to the study. As expected, there were books everywhere in the study. Obviously, Song Ruyu had moved all the things from her house here. But then he saw a lot of familiar things, all of which belonged to him. However, these things were either in Shanghai or in the Sihiyuan. How did they end up here? It was not difficult to guess. Obviously, Song Ruyu had moved them here. These familiar things reminded Qin Sheng of a familiar woman. He didn't know how she was doing now. Qin Sheng didn't ask others, and it seemed that no one had told him. Maybe she came back just because of him. While Qin Sheng was in a daze, Song Ryu had already changed clothes and came out. She was wearing a black dress. She saw Qin Sheng staring at the things in the study and naturally knew that he had seen those things. Song Ryu had to explain. I asked Hao Lei and Xia Ding to bring them back from Shanghai. Qin Sheng didn't say anything more. He just held Song Ryu's hand and said, let's go shopping. However, he had decided to live here in the future. After all, Song Ryu was here. Dio Itai No. 1 courtyard was close to Shidan Joy City. Song Ryu wanted to buy some daily necessities. If she wanted to buy clothes, Qin Sheng would definitely take her to SKP. Of course, these clothes could only be worn at ordinary times. It would be too eye-catching to wear them at work. When they arrived at Shidan Joy City, Qin Sheng and Song Ryu found that the shopping mall was crowded. It seemed to be very lively. It seemed that a certain brand was holding an event here, and a star with some influence had come. Qin Sheng and Song Ryu could understand such things. It had nothing to do with them, so they just continued to shop in their own way. Song Ryu didn't go straight to her destination and go home after shopping. If she had been alone, she might have done so. But today, Qin Sheng accompanied her to enjoy shopping. Song Ryu had a good taste and a good taste. Qin Sheng, who knew a lot of things, could chat with her to his heart's content. Therefore, Qin Sheng had more and more things in his hands. When they were almost done shopping, they were ready to go home. In the evening, they invited Xia Ding and the others to have dinner. As soon as Qin Sheng and Song Ryu walked into the elevator, they saw several security guards in black escorting the male star, who seemed to have participated in the event just now, into the elevator, followed by 2 or 3 people, including his assistant. Qin Sheng held Song Ryu's hand and took 2 steps back to make enough space for them. He observed the male star with interest, trying to see if there was any difference between this male star in reality and the one on TV. However, Song Ryu was not interested at all. She just lowered her head and replied to the messages on her phone. Just then, a security guard who walked into the elevator suddenly shouted at Qin Sheng and Song Ryu, "Come out." Moreover, his tone was very unfriendly. Except for the male star and his assistant, there were only Qin Sheng and Song Ryu in the elevator. Qin Sheng slightly frowned and asked subconsciously, "Are you calling us?" The strong man glared at him and said, "I'm talking to you. Come out." Qin Sheng's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect to encounter such a situation. He found it funny and said, "It seems that we came in first." The strong man didn't pay attention to Qin Sheng's words at all. He shouted again, "Didn't you listen to me? Come out." Qin Sheng glanced at the male star, who seemed to have no interest in this at all. It seemed that he had long been used to this kind of treatment. Qin Sheng said angrily with a sullen face, "What if I say no?" Hearing this, the strong man didn't hesitate and directly reached out to pull Song Ryu, who was closer to him. He was courting death. Chapter 1158. This was Sijio City. Qin Sheng had seen arrogant and domineering hedonistic sons of rich families, as well as sons of rich families who spent a lot of money in one go. However, which of those sons of rich families did not have a strong background? After all, if you wanted to show off in Sijio City, you had to have the strength to do so. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to show off, he would become a retard. But today, an actor was so ostentatious and even provoked Qin Sheng. Wasn't he courting death? One had to know that the young masters who had conflicts with Qin Sheng or had been stepped on by Qin Sheng before were all existences that the entertainer in front of her looked up to. Qin Sheng and Song Ryu were about to take the elevator and leave, but such a dramatic scene suddenly happened. To be honest, Qin Sheng was very polite and didn't want to make trouble. However, this actor's security guard or bodyguard provoked Qin Sheng, and the actor didn't care about it at all. Qin Sheng couldn't be blamed for being rude. Most importantly, this strong man reached out to pull Song Ryu. How could Qin Sheng be angry? Song Ryu was also a little angry at this moment. She didn't expect these people to be so unreasonable. Even if you were a big star, you should be reasonable. They came in first, why should they go out? Moreover, the elevator could also accommodate these people. Even if they wanted to let them out, they should at least be polite. Now, they actually dared to fight. When the strong man reached out, Qin Sheng had already pulled Song Ryu behind him. He kicked the strong man directly. This kick was so powerful that the strong man was directly kicked out of the elevator. Everyone was stunned. Whether it was the strong man, the fresh meat, or his assistant, they didn't expect that this seemingly ordinary man would dare to fight. They didn't know how to react for a while. The fresh meat came to his senses first. He shouted angrily, "What are you doing?" Qin Sheng sneered and said, "Oh, you can talk now? I thought you were mute." The fresh meat's assistant scolded, "Are you crazy?" Qin Sheng didn't pay attention to this fat old woman, because the strong man and his companion had already rushed over. There were also many onlookers and fans outside. No one expected such an accident. Qin Sheng did not flinch. He quickly walked out of the elevator and faced the strong man. He easily dodged his punch, grabbed the man's arm, and punched his abdomen twice. The strong man curled up on the ground in pain. Just as the two companions were about to help, the person in charge stopped them. After all, if they made a big deal out of it, it would definitely be headline news tomorrow. The person in charge restrained his anger and said, "Sir, do you know what you are doing?" Qin Sheng said with disdain, "You should ask them, shouldn't you?" The little fresh meat had already walked out, and he was talking to the lady. The person in charge shouted, "We all saw it. He started it. Call the police and arrest him." At this moment, Qin Sheng was very disgusted with this little fresh meat. On normal days, he had only seen these stars on TV who were ostentatious and did not take their fans seriously at all. To put it bluntly, they were all spoiled. However, in front of people like Qin Sheng, they were not even worth a fart. They could only say that they were unlucky to have provoked Qin Sheng today. Qin Sheng said angrily, "Shut the F***ck up." The little fresh meat was wearing a hat. No one had ever treated him with such an attitude. He was a little confused by the man in front of him and said incoherently, You, what did you say?" The person in charge did not expect that the man in front of him would dare to scold the popular artist invited by the company. He lowered his voice and said, "Sir, if you speak rudely again, don't blame me for being rude." "Be rude? I hope you'd better not be polite," Qin Sheng said disapprovingly. His words made the little fresh meat so angry that he was about to vomit blood. However, the person in charge was not stupid. This was Sijio City, where everyone had some background. What he was most afraid of was meeting a big shot with a real background. That was because the person in charge had already noticed Song Ryu, who was obviously the female companion of the man in front of him. It was said that to judge how successful a man was, one had to look at the level of the woman around him. The beauty in front of him was really elegant. The most important thing was that she had a strong aura. At this moment, she stared at these people outside with a sullen face, which made him shudder with fear. He subconsciously wanted to say something, but stopped. At this moment, the police who were in charge of the order of the shopping mall today arrived. After getting a general understanding of the situation, they did not say much. They just took everyone to an office in the shopping mall. After all, with so many people watching, it was easy for accidents to happen. This was Shidan. If something really happened, they could not bear the responsibility. When they arrived at the office, before the police asked what was going on, the little fresh meat shouted again, "Police, arrest him quickly." He started the fight. Put him in jail for 10 days to half a month. The three policemen did not like this little fresh meat at all. At this time, he was arrogantly ordering people around, which made them feel even more uncomfortable. Before the three policemen said anything, Qin Sheng said, "I advise you to say nothing from now on, or you will definitely regret it." The little fresh meat was rendered speechless by Qin Sheng's rebuttal. His assistant, on the other hand, started to nag at Qin Sheng. The police also wanted to solve this matter quickly, so they asked, "What on earth is going on? Is it like what they said?" Qin Sheng did not bother to pay attention to others. He just repeated what had happened just now and then said, "There are surveillance cameras in the shopping mall. If you don't believe me, you can check the surveillance records. I think everything will be clear at a glance." Hearing Qin Sheng's words, the policeman already knew what was going on. Obviously, this little fresh meat was the one who did wrong first. At this time, Song Ryu came back from the bathroom. She walked slowly to Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng nodded. Of course, he knew what she meant. Obviously, Song Ryu had taken the time to solve this matter. As expected, before the policeman continued to ask questions, one of the senior leaders received a phone call. He glanced at the outstanding Song Ryu and seemed to have guessed something. A few minutes later, the policeman came back. He said to Song Ryu respectfully, "Miss Song, we have checked the surveillance records. There is nothing wrong with you. You can go now." Song Ryu smiled and nodded to him. "Thank you." Under everyone's gaze, Song Ryu and Qin Sheng left the office casually. Seeing this, the little fresh meat and his assistant and bodyguards could not sit still. The little fresh meat asked loudly, "Why can they go?" The policeman looked at the little fresh meat pitifully. Today, they had kicked an iron plate. Even he did not expect that the beautiful girl had such a powerful background. He did not pay attention to the little fresh meat. Instead, he ordered, "Take them back," and continued to make statements. After saying this, he left directly. The rest of the matter could be handled according to the procedure. Chang Baji had been waiting outside the office. When Qin Sheng and Song Ryu came out, Chang Baji quickly walked over and asked, "Are you all right?" Song Ryu said lightly, "Yes." All of Qin Sheng's good mood today had been ruined by this little fresh meat. How could he just let it go like this? He directly told Chang Baji, "Investigate that little fresh meat. Leave the rest to Chenbei Wang." Chang Baji, of course, knew what Qin Sheng wanted to do. He immediately nodded and did as he was told. Song Ryu slightly frowned and said, "Is it necessary to make such a big fuss?" Qin Sheng chuckled and said, "You can bully me, but not you." Hearing this, Song Ryu did not say anything more. A so-called bright and beautiful little fresh meat in front of ordinary people could disappear in public forever with a few phone calls. Since he dared to be so arrogant today, he must pay for his behavior. Because if she and Qin Sheng were just ordinary people today, they might be the ones who would suffer in the end. Originally, Qin Sheng had a dinner party in the evening. Unexpectedly, he was delayed by this matter for too long. When he hurried to the party with Song Ryu, the others were already waiting for them. Since he could bring Song Ryu to the party, it meant that there were no outsiders. Most importantly, the others had come with their wives. Qin Sheng did not want to be shown public affection. When the waiter opened the door of the private room, Qin Sheng saw everyone talking happily and laughing. After so many years, the four people in the university dormitory gathered together again. So many years had passed unconsciously. They used to be teenagers chasing after their dreams. They also used to wear bright clothes and ride horses. Now, they had married and had a career. The only thing that did not change was the feelings they had for each other. Chapter 11:59. The teenagers, who used to be full of infinite reverie about the future, had now become stay-at-home dads. They didn't know whether the teenagers had lived the life they wanted, or maybe they had lived the life they hated the most. It seemed that most of them were the latter. However, these had nothing to do with today. At least when they got together today, they wouldn't think about those annoying things. Qin Sheng and Song Ryu, the two hosts, were the last to arrive because of the episode just now. They were somewhat embarrassed. However, the others present didn't have any emotions. After all, they had been waiting for 3 years, and waiting a little longer was not a big deal. Among them, Xiaoding had already met Qin Sheng, so everyone knew about Qin Sheng's recent situation. When Qin Sheng and Song Ryu came in, Xiaoding joked with a smile, "Big brother, we're late. Drink 3 cups of wine as punishment." Today, they all brought their families. It was the first big family gathering in their dormitory. However, they didn't bring their children. Otherwise, it would probably be a special party for naughty kids. Qin Sheng said embarrassedly, "I was delayed by something. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let alone 3 cups of wine. I'm willing to drink 6 cups of wine as punishment today." Everyone laughed at the same time. Qin Sheng was still Qin Sheng, the big brother of their dormitory. He walked over quickly, gave Yukefi a big hug, and said, "I heard that you've given birth to 2 children. You're ahead of everyone in our dormitory." Yukefi replied with a smile, "Big brother, now you're the only one left. You have to work harder." Although Qin Sheng didn't attend his wedding, he didn't have any emotions. He also knew that it was the most difficult time for the Qin family at that time, and they couldn't help at all. He could only hope that the Qin family's affairs would end smoothly. Qin Sheng walked up to Chao Yufeng, punched him twice, and said, "Lao Chao, you've become a director. Work hard. When you become a minister or a provincial governor, all of us will follow you." Chao Yufeng was speechless. Compared with Yu Kefi and Xia Ding, Chao Yufeng was the calmest. He had been making steady progress in recent years. It was not easy for him to be a director in his early 30s, let alone in a ministry. Of course, Chao Yufeng knew that Qin Sheng was joking. It should be noted that Qin Sheng's uncle and uncle were the real high-ranking officials of the border provinces. As a small director, he was nothing at all. He could only say modestly, "Big brother, don't mock me. In Beijing, you can hit 1 or 2 directors with a brick. What am I? So, are we waiting for you to become the minister or the governor?" Qin Sheng laughed. Chao Yufeng replied confidently, "I will try my best." After greeting Chao Yufeng and Yu Kefi, Qin Sheng greeted their wives. Qin Sheng had already met Xia Ding's wife, Qin Xin, Chao Yufeng's wife, Luo Xiao, and Yu Kefi's wife, Shin Ruochen, so he did not feel so distant from them. The others greeted Song Ruyu one after another, calling her sister-in-law politely. Xia Ding even joked that Song Ruyu had become more beautiful and wondered how his boss had managed to win her heart. The others burst into laughter. The 4 beautiful women sat together and chatted about their own topics. Although Song Ryu didn't talk much, she naturally became the center of the conversation. Among them, Luo Xiao had been in contact with Song Ryu the most and knew her best. After all, she had lived in Sijio City since she was a child. Qin Xin had seen Song Ryu several times and heard Xia Ding often talk about her. She knew how great this sister was and respected her from the bottom of her heart. Shin Ruochen was relatively simple and did not have too many thoughts. She just thought that Sister Ryu was more beautiful and had more temperament than her. As for other things, she did not think much. After the dishes were all served, Qin Sheng took the initiative to drink 3 cups of wine as a punishment. He had not drunk much in the past 3 years, so he must make up for it when he came back. After drinking, Qin Sheng looked at Yu Kefi and asked, "Lao Si, I heard from Xia Ding that Dad has completely retired. Now the full power of the company is given to you. You must be under a lot of pressure now, right?" Yu Kefi shook his head and smiled bitterly. He was the most bitter person among them. "Big brother, you know that I don't like these things, but I have no choice. I can't destroy the foundation that I have worked for all my life. I have to bite the bullet and do it." He envied Xia Ding the most. Both marriage and life were what he wanted. The second was Chao Yufeng. Although Chao Yufeng chose Luo Xiao, which put a lot of pressure on him, it also gave him a lot of help. At least, this was what Chao Yufeng wanted. The last one was Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng's background was much stronger than his. Although the Qin family had gone through a lot of storms, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Moreover, the Zhu family was behind him. Qin Sheng could do whatever he wanted. But what about him? His career was chosen by the family, and so was his marriage. It seemed that he lived for the family all his life. So sometimes it was quite tiring. Qin Sheng scolded him with a smile. "Compared with ordinary people, you are much better. Be content." Yu Kefi laughed and said, "I often comfort myself like this. Sometimes it may be hypocritical. So when the old man is gone, I will give the company to the professional manager and enjoy life with my wife and children." "That's true. Family businesses will eventually be like this," Qin Sheng replied calmly. Wasn't the Qin family the same now? At this time, Qin Sheng looked at Chao Yufeng and said, "Lao Chao, have you ever thought about external exercise?" "I have thought about it, but I want to wait for another 2 years. When I have a firm foothold in the ministry, I can have more resources," Chao Yufeng said truthfully. Qin Sheng said casually, "Okay, I will talk to you at that time." Qin Sheng did not say too much, but anyone could understand what he meant. That was, he would definitely help. Qin Sheng still had this ability, whether it was in Zhejiang, Shanghai, or Guangdong. At this time, Xia Ding interrupted and said, "Boss, don't talk about us. Let's talk about you. Now you are back when we let us attend the wedding banquet. We have been waiting for so long. Among them, Xiaoding was the closest to Qin Sheng. When they met last time, they had already talked about what they wanted to talk about. Now, he was like a fish in water in Shanghai. Not to mention that Shangshan Ruoshui was now the most famous high-end private club in Shanghai, which brought him a lot of connections. Just by dealing with Hao Lei, he could make a lot of money. Moreover, he was close to Xue Qingyan. Later, he was familiar with Zhu Jiao like a brother. Now Xiaoding definitely had a promising future. He had already surpassed his father's achievements. Of course, Xiaoding was very clear that he could have all these thanks to Qin Sheng. The wedding had been put on the agenda. The Qin family, the Song family, and the Zhu family were discussing about it. So Qin Sheng said, truthfully, I will let you attend the wedding banquet sooner or later. Otherwise, how can I get back the gifts? Qin Sheng only gave gifts to Yu Kefi. He was not there when Chao Yufeng and Xiaoding got married, but his sister Qin Ran gave gifts on behalf of Qin Sheng. Xiaoding and Chao Yufeng did not give gifts. Boss, you have to give us an approximate time. Yu Kefi asked. The women over there were also listening. Qin Sheng thought for a moment and said, it will be around New Year's Day. Recently, we have been preparing to take wedding photos. Hearing this news, everyone hurried to congratulate Qin Sheng and Song Ruyu. Qin Sheng and Song Ruyu's marriage would definitely be a big news in Sijia City. After all, the Golden Boy and Jade Girl had such a powerful background. Song Ruyu's grandfather was the most senior person in the current generation, and Qin Sheng's uncle and uncle were both high-ranking officials in the border provinces. If Qin Sheng's father did not have an accident, it would definitely be the wedding of the century. Chao Yufeng chuckled and said, Boss, don't worry. We will definitely come to help in advance. Qin Sheng smiled and thanked him. Xiaoding said happily, let's drink. We only talk and can't even drink. Everyone picked up their wine glasses again and clinked them with a smile. In the middle, Qin Sheng and Xiaoding went to the toilet together and smoked. Because Luo Xiao was also pregnant, it was not good for the men to smoke in the box. Xiaoding said casually, Boss, you haven't met Sister Qingyan yet, have you? Qin Sheng shook his head and said, I just came back. I have a lot of things to do and have no time to go to Shanghai. Sister Qingyan should already know that you are back, but it was definitely not me. Hasn't she called you yet? Xiaoding asked curiously. Qin Sheng frowned slightly and said, no. Speaking of Xue Qingyan, Qin Sheng always felt that his relationship with her was too complicated. Sometimes he did not know how to face it. Qin Sheng braced himself and asked, Is she married? Xiaoding shook his head and said, no, she is still alone. Qin Sheng stopped talking. Xiaoding looked at Qin Sheng. In fact, he wanted to say another person, but he was afraid that it would cause Qin Sheng more trouble. Therefore, after hesitating for a long time, Xiaoding said slowly, Boss, at the end of this month, Lin Su and Yuan will go back to China. After saying this, Xiaoding directly extinguished the cigarette butt and left. However, Qin Sheng was stunned on the spot. All kinds of emotions, including happiness, excitement, uneasiness, and guilt, rushed in, making Qin Sheng a little confused in an instant. Lin Su, the woman he owed the most. Yuan, his daughter. He was finally going to see them. Chapter 1160. In this life, Qin Sheng owed too many people. In the past 3 years, he owed Song Ryu a lot, but he also owed Lin Su, who was far away in the United States. He felt more guilty and indebted to Lin Su. After all, Lin Su had lived alone in the United States with her daughter for 3 years. Although Song Ryu had taken the initiative to talk to him about this when he was in Chengdu, and Qin Sheng did not expect Song Ryu's generosity, he had not taken the initiative to contact Lin Su since he came back. There were many reasons for this. First of all, Qin Sheng had to consider the feelings of all sides. After all, the accident happened because he went to Ningbo to attend the old lady's funeral. The Qin family's attitude was good, but the Zhu family and the Song family had a lot of opinions about Qin Sheng, especially the Song family. Therefore, if Qin Sheng took the initiative to contact or see Lin Su as soon as he came back, It would directly arouse the Song family's disgust. Qin Sheng dared not be so unscrupulous. Secondly, Qin Sheng had not figured out how he should meet her. He did not know how he should face his daughter, whom he had not met yet. He did not know whether his daughter knew that she had a father like him. If she knew, why had he never visited her before? Although he was a new father, he had been a child for so many years, and he knew what it was like. For example, he had not found a suitable way to get along with the old man. Therefore, he did not know how to face his daughter. Finally, that was the most important thing. Although Song Ryu knew of Yuan's existence and acquiesced to her existence, it did not represent the Song family's attitude. The Qin family naturally kept silent, and the Zhu family would reprimand Qin Sheng at most, but the Song family's attitude was very important. After all, Qin Sheng and Song Ryu had not officially married yet. Therefore, Qin Sheng was more or less evasive. But now, Xiaoding directly told Qin Sheng when Lin Su and Yuan would come back. Qin Sheng could not evade anymore, and could only face it calmly. However, putting aside all the factors, how could Qin Sheng not be happy to see Lin Su again after more than 3 years? In particular, he was going to see the daughter he had been yearning for day and night since he found out. How could Qin Sheng not be excited? By the time Qin Sheng returned to the private room, he had already regained his composure. The experiences of the past 3 years had made Qin Sheng more mature. To put it bluntly, he was like an old man who was as still as a mountain in the sunset. To put it nicely, he was even more mature and experienced. No one could see through the waves in Qin Sheng's heart. Qin Sheng picked up his glass and continued to drink. Song Ryu did not ask any questions. The atmosphere of the party was still as warm as before. Back then, Xiaoding had joked that when he had children, he would make Qin Sheng their godfather. Now that he had a son and Qin Sheng was back, it was time for Qin Sheng to fulfill his promise. Among them, Qin Sheng and Xiaoding were the closest. Naturally, he did not go back on his word and nodded in agreement. This made Xiaoding and Qin very happy. After all, with a godfather like Qin Sheng, their son had already reached the peak of his life the moment he was born. Who wouldn't be envious? Even Xiao Yufeng and Yu Kefi, who were present, were very envious. However, they also knew the relationship between Qin Sheng and Xiaoding. It was somewhat inappropriate for them to make such a request. The family party did not end until 10 o'clock in the evening. Qin Sheng, Xiaoding, Xiao Yufeng, and Yu Kefi had drunk a lot of wine and left the restaurant drunkenly. The 4 beautiful women with different temperaments did not touch the wine. They supported their men and left. This scene made Qin Sheng feel somewhat emotional. Time really made people grow old. Qin Sheng waited until the others got in the car and left. Then he took Song Ryu back to the number 1 courtyard of Daitai. Tonight, he had told his family that he would not go back to Shishan and would stay in the number 1 courtyard of Daitai. As soon as he got in the car, Chang Baji handed him a bottle of yogurt, which Song Ryu had asked him to buy in advance. On the way back to the number 1 courtyard Daitai, Song Ryu looked at the night view outside the window and asked inexplicably, Qin Sheng, do you like boys or girls? This question made Qin Sheng's brain spin quickly, because Song Ryu knew about Yuan. Qin Sheng replied unhurriedly, I like both boys and girls. I don't think there is any difference, right? Song Ryu said, then I'll give birth to a boy. The meaning of this sentence could not be more obvious. Since Lin Su had given birth to a girl, she had to give birth to a boy. After all, a boy could continue the bloodline of the Qin family, which would also make Song Ryu's position in the Qin family more stable. To put it bluntly, she still had a knot in her heart. Qin Sheng could not help thinking, if Lin Su had given birth to a boy, what would Song Ryu have chosen? Maybe there would not be such a scene now. Song Ryu would definitely not be with him again. This might be Song Ryu's bottom line. In the morning, when the sun shone on Qin Sheng's face, Song Ryu had already gotten up to make breakfast. Her life was very regular. After washing up, Qin Sheng opened the curtains. The weather today was really good. The sun was shining brightly and the breeze was warm. There were already many people in Yuantan Park outside. Some of the warm scenes made Qin Sheng envious. When Qin Sheng went to the dining room, a sumptuous breakfast had been prepared on the table. Song Ryu was still busy in the kitchen. Qin Sheng wondered how lucky he was to have such a beautiful woman in the kitchen. Perhaps feeling Qin Sheng's gaze, Song Ryu subconsciously turned around and then smiled. "Have you taken a bath? We can have breakfast when I'm done frying the eggs." Qin Sheng did not say anything. He just sat quietly at the table and waited for Song Ryu. When Song Ryu came out with the plate, Qin Sheng directly pulled her into his arms and stared at her tenderly. Song Ryu was a little embarrassed as she said, "Stop it. Hurry up and eat. I have to go to the office later." Qin Sheng did not act recklessly. He only said, "I want to hold you." Song Ryu said helplessly, "Then hold me." Therefore, Qin Sheng held Song Ryu in his arms and finished breakfast. Although Song Ryu felt embarrassed, she still felt very warm. After breakfast, Song Ryu went to the office, while Qin Sheng had an appointment with an old friend. This old friend was Old Master He, who had spared no effort to help the Qin family. In the past 3 years, he had gone all out to help the He family deal with Elder Long. Now that Qin Sheng was back, he naturally wanted to visit Old Master He. It was still the familiar Sihiyuan. Old Master He still lived here. Although he was alone, it was very quiet. Occasionally, he would meet old friends or play mahjong with a few friends. In the past 3 years, the most frequent guest should be Qin Chongqing. He liked to chat with this wise old man very much. When Qin Sheng arrived at the Sihiyuan, Old Master He was sitting alone in the pavilion, drinking tea and feeding the fish. Before Qin Sheng walked closer, Old Master He felt it. He smiled and said, "Your state of mind is much more stable than 3 years ago. Maybe this is the original intention of your aunt." Old Master He was not polite or sentimental, as if Qin Sheng had never left. This kind of meeting made Qin Sheng feel very comfortable. He smiled and said, "Old Master, do you know my aunt? I heard it from your first uncle." "How would I know? I really don't know whether all these were calculated by your grandfather or a freak accident. But I did not expect that the third guardian family was only your aunt. It seems that the Qin family protects the Qin family. It seems that it makes sense. Old Master He is still Old Master He." Old Master He said with a smile. Qin Sheng suddenly had the illusion that he had been calculated by his grandfather for the rest of his life. Could it be that everything was really calculated by his grandfather? "Old Master, you don't seem to have changed much. You're still so strong." Qin Sheng casually sat beside Old Master He and smiled. "Old Master," he said faintly, "just because the exterior hasn't changed doesn't mean that the interior hasn't changed. Half of a person's body is already in the grave. Who knows when he'll pass away? I've already lived enough in this life. In the future, I'll just repeat myself every day. If one day I really end up in the hospital, I won't suffer and leave with a smile." Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Your mentality is not comparable to others. I heard that you're going to get married?" "Old Master," he asked. Qin Sheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "You are so well informed. Of course I know. If you get married as soon as possible, we elders will be completely relieved. After all, you are not young anymore," Old Master said. Everyone related to the Qin family was willing to see Qin Sheng and Song Ryu get married as soon as possible. In addition, with the support of the Zhu family, the Qin family would be more stable in the future. Naturally, they could also enjoy the benefits. Qin Sheng said honestly, "Yes, it is time." Old Master He changed the topic again. "The old man is struggling at death's door in Beidei. When are you going to deal with him? There should be an ending." Qin Sheng did not answer directly. He only said, "Old Master, thank you for the past 3 years. You don't have to thank me. You still have to thank your Mr. Ding. Without his strategy, we wouldn't be so capable. Besides, we've benefited a lot from the Qin family. So in turn, we have to thank the Qin family." Old Master He replied straightforwardly. Qin Sheng was used to the way the Old Master talked. Qin Sheng said with some emotion, "I did not expect Mr. Ding to come out of retirement. I have too many things to learn from him." Thinking of what he had talked with Mr. Ding that day, Qin Sheng was very excited. This might be what he would do in the future. At this time, Old Master He slowly turned to look at Qin Sheng and asked very seriously, "Qin Sheng, 3 years have passed. Are you ready? Are you ready? Of course, Qin Shi knew what the old master meant. Was he ready to support the Qin family? Chapter 1161. Since the He family had chosen to support the Qin family with all their strength, the He family had been in the same boat with the Qin family. They were bound together for good or bad. The further the Qin family went, the more benefits the He family would get. If the He family had not been exposed in the past, they might not have needed the Qin family. After all, they had their own way to go. However, the He family had offended too many people because of the Qin family. They definitely needed the Qin family and the Zhu family and the Song family, which were behind the Qin family, in order to maintain their foothold in Siju City. This might have been the He family's choice after weighing the pros and cons. However, Old Master he did not think so much at the beginning. Just like what he had said when he first met Qin Sheng, the He family was the guardian family of the Qin family. When the Qin family was in trouble, the He family must stand up without hesitation, not for benefits, but to repay the kindness. However, the rest of the He family were hesitant at the beginning. They dared not disobey the Old Master's decision. After all, the He family was built by the Old Master from scratch. The younger generation, who enjoyed the blessings, had no right to say what to do. However, they were still uneasy. However, after the Old Master finished explaining his reasons, they believed in his decision in the end. That was because the Old Master's reasons were irresistible. That was, although Qin Chang'an had fallen, the Qin family would rise again sooner or later, especially after Qin Sheng and Song Ruyu got married. The future of the Qin family was Qin Sheng. Behind Qin Sheng were the Zhu family and the Song family, especially the Zhu family, which was like the sun at noon. Others were not qualified to help the Qin family, even if they wanted to. However, everything did not go so smoothly. 3 years ago, when Qin Sheng got into trouble, the He family was shocked. If Qin Sheng had died, the Qin family would have fallen sooner or later. However, the He family had offended many people because of the Qin family. Those people did not dare to hit the Qin family when they were down, but it did not mean that they would not dare to do anything to the He family. The Zhu family and the Song family could protect the Qin family, but who would protect the He family? The He family would pay a heavy price because of this. During that time, Old Master he was calm and composed. However, the rest of the He family was under great pressure. Fortunately, it was all a false alarm. After all, Qin Changxing had met Old Master he after returning and told him the truth, which could be considered as stabilizing the He family's morale. However, 3 years was indeed a long time. 1 year passed, and another year passed. There was still no news of Qin Sheng. The He family was getting more and more afraid that what Qin Changxing said was just to comfort them and to hide the truth. This couldn't be blamed on the He family. Not to mention the He family, everyone else was becoming more and more skeptical of what Qin Changxing said, let alone the He family. It was not until Qin Sheng successfully returned to the capital that all the rumors and uneasiness completely disappeared. Under the pavilion, Old Master He, who could be said to be sitting on the fishing platform after Qin Sheng's return, smiled as he looked at this youngster who had met with many misfortunes. The Qin Sheng that he hoped to see was not the Qin Sheng now, but the Qin Sheng who had infinite possibilities in the future, the one who could surpass Qin Chang'an. In this way, the He family could follow the glory. Moreover, if Qin Sheng was only like this, relying on the wealth and resources accumulated by the Qin family, as well as the background of the Zhu family and the Song family, he would be very disappointed. Of course, Old Master's question had a deep meaning. Qin Sheng picked up a handful of fish feed and directly sprinkled it into the pond. He chuckled and said, "Old Master, I prepared it 3 years ago. Now another 3 years have passed. If I don't prepare it now, the daylilies will be cold." After eating a handful of fish, thousands of koi flocked to the pond. This scene was really spectacular. Old Master, he finally smiled and said, I was waiting for you to say this." At this time, footsteps came from the corridor. Qin Sheng subconsciously turned around and saw 2 middle-aged men walking slowly toward him. One looked calm and experienced, while the other dressed a little casually and looked elegant. Of course, Qin Sheng had already recognized who these two were. They were the two sons of old Master He. Qin Sheng smiled and waved to greet them. The two men of the He family also smiled back. The second son of the He family laughed and said, "Qin Sheng, welcome back." Qin Sheng replied calmly, "Second brother, long time no see." The second son of the He family patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and said, "Indeed, long time no see. Let's have a drink later." At this time, old Master He slowly stood up and said, "I'm a little tired. Call me when it's time for dinner. You young people can chat." Old Master He was just talking about the old days with Qin Sheng. The two men of the He family might talk to Qin Sheng about other things. In the past 3 years, although the He family followed the Qin family and made a lot of profits in the capital market, they did not have deeper cooperation with the Qin family after all. Qin Changxing did not care about this. After all, it was Mr. Ding who was in charge of the Qin family's company. However, Mr. Ding did not have much friendship with the He family, so it was not convenient for the He family to talk about some things. Now that Qin Sheng had returned, he was the man who could really make decisions in the Qin family. Therefore, the two men of the He family wanted to talk to Qin Sheng about specific things, which was related to the He family's future. After all, there was no big shot like Mr. Ding in the He family. Therefore, Qin Sheng stayed in the He family's Sihiyuan until 5 p.m. He talked with the two men of the He family about many things. Although he did not dare to say that he did not hide anything, he talked about the Qin family's future direction. As for how the He family would choose, it was up to them. At noon, Qin Sheng drank a few more glasses of wine. After that, he rested in the Sihiyuan for a while. After he got up and talked for a while, he left. Originally, Qin Sheng was going back to the Shishan villa at night. Unexpectedly, Xia Ding called Qin Sheng and asked him to go there. Qin Sheng did not know what was going on, so he simply went there on the way. The place that Xia Ding said was on Xinbi Street. It was said that it was a private restaurant with good taste. It had a deep research on Shandong cuisine, and the taste was very good. When Qin Sheng arrived, Xia Ding was waiting at the door. It was also in a remodeled Sihiyuan. The Sihiyuan was not big and had no special features. It was similar to most Sihiyuan. Not everyone could be as generous as old Master He, who dug a pond in the Sihiyuan to raise koi fish. "What's going on? Why did you call me over in a hurry?" Qin Sheng said casually. Of course, Xia Ding had something to say, but it was not convenient for him to say it directly. He smiled and said, "Nothing. I just didn't drink enough last night. I want to fight with you tonight. Do you think I don't know you? If you have something to say, just say it. I don't have time to waste with you." Qin Sheng scolded angrily. Xia Ding laughed and said, "Don't worry. Let's talk while eating." At this time, Qin Sheng and Xia Ding had walked into the Sihiyuan. Chang Baji also followed them. After all, there were no outsiders today. Chang Baji and Xia Ding were old friends. Qin Sheng went in and found that the Sihiyuan was deserted. There seemed to be no other guests except them. This Sihiyuan only served 4 tables of guests every day. So Qin Sheng asked, "Didn't you say that the private restaurant is good? Why is there no one here? Have you been cheated?" Xiao Ding did not know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Big brother, why would I cheat you? I can't get a reservation in normal times. My friend used his connections to get a reservation." Qin Sheng frowned and said, "You brought a friend?" Xiao Ding really had no choice today. That friend found him and said that he had to help him no matter what. Moreover, he also owed this friend a favor before. He had to bite the bullet and return the favor. Xia Ding said helplessly, "How to say it? It's a little complicated. You'll know when you see me." Qin Sheng was more confused. What did Xia Ding mean by deliberately being mysterious? It did not seem like his style. The private room was very big. Unfortunately, there were only 3 people, Qin Sheng, Xia Ding, and Chang Baji. Lao Chang sat quietly beside them. Xia Ding and Qin Sheng drank tea and talked about things in Shanghai. Hao Lei had already returned to Shanghai. There were many things waiting for him to deal with there. Xia Ding happened to have something to do in Beijing, so he would go back in a few days. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, Xia Ding's friend had not arrived yet. Qin Sheng asked again, "When will your friend arrive?" "Soon, soon." Xia Ding forced a smile on his face, but in his heart, he was cursing the other side countless times. In the future, he would never do something like this again, even if he was beaten to death. How extravagant was it that they actually made him and Boss wait for so long? Before his voice died away, the door of the private room was pushed open. The door of the private room was pushed open, and a chubby man wearing glasses walked in with a smile on his face. The man looked to be less than 40 years old. As soon as he entered the room, he hurriedly apologized. "Young Master Xia, young Master Qin, I'm so sorry. I'm late. The traffic was too heavy. I should have left earlier." Xiaoding was very unhappy. "Sit down." Qin Sheng was serious. After all, they did not know each other. He did not need to be so polite. The chubby man could feel that both Qin Sheng and Xiaoding were angry. Cold sweat kept flowing down his face. He had rushed over from Shanghai. After all, the company had encountered such a big issue. He had to pull a lot of strings before he could find Xiaoding. Xiaoding's expression changed. Because Xiaoding was very famous in the circle in Shanghai now, many people also knew his relationship with the Qin family's young master. Maybe only he could help solve this problem, even if he had to spend a lot of money. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive in the entertainment circle in the future. Xiaoding was originally working for someone else. He did not have any friendship with the chubby man in front of him. He did not want to waste Qin Sheng's time. He directly said, "Lao Zhao, I've helped you to make an appointment. The rest is up to you. It has nothing to do with me." Okay. Thank you, Child Xia. I will never forget your great kindness." The chubby man, called Lao Zhao, quickly expressed his attitude. Qin Sheng was even more confused. What was going on today? He looked at Xiaoding with a puzzled face. Finally, his eyes fell on this Lao Zhao. Elder Zhao could not sit still. He did not know if he could get what he wanted to do today. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Young Master Qin, I'm here to apologize to you today. It's all my fault for not disciplining them properly, which caused some misunderstanding between us. I hope young Master Qin can forgive me." Qin Sheng was confused. He had only been back in Beijing for a few days. He had not seen this man before. How could there be a misunderstanding? Misunderstanding? I'm afraid you got the wrong person. We don't know each other, right? Qin Sheng said truthfully. Lao Zhao did not know what to say. He smiled and said, "Actually, it was like this. Forget it, Child Qin. I'll let him tell you." After saying this, Lao Zhao directly stood up and walked to the door of the private room. His face changed instantly. He was no longer humble. He shouted angrily, "Get the F***CK in here." At this time, a handsome young man walked in slowly with his head down. When he saw this man, Qin Sheng finally understood what was going on. Wasn't this the extremely arrogant little fresh meat yesterday afternoon? Chapter 1162. It was a small world. Qin Sheng did not expect Xiaoding to be so mysterious. It turned out that it was because of this matter. If he had not seen this little fresh meat, Qin Sheng would never have thought that it would be because of this matter. After all, this matter had nothing to do with Xiaoding at all. To be honest, Qin Sheng was just a little angry. If he hadn't seen this little fresh meat who was so arrogant yesterday, he might have forgotten about this matter in a few days. However, Qin Sheng had forgotten about this matter, but it didn't mean that Chang Baji had forgotten about it. After yesterday, Chang Baji handed over this matter to Chun Beiwang, and the rest of the things were left to Chun Beiwang. With the Qin family's influence in the capital market and other resources, it was easy to deal with a little fresh meat. The most important thing was that Song Ryu made 2 phone calls casually. Although these 2 phone calls were only at the bureau level, they were in key departments with real power. After all, they were related departments in charge. Therefore, it was not only this little fresh meat who suffered tragedy, but also the agency behind him. In recent years, it was also a little famous in the industry. It had cultivated several popular little fresh meats and beautiful female stars. In addition, it had signed a lot of powerful actors. It could be said that it had a promising future. After all, the behind-the-scenes boss and the shareholders were very powerful. Otherwise, how could they fight in the entertainment circle? However, after this incident last night, the company changed dramatically in an instant. First, The partners terminated the contracts with the company's artists. Then, many film and television projects, variety shows, and so on, which have been discussed, fell through. In particular, all the cooperation with this little fresh meat was stopped by the partners. At this time, the company's management realized that something big had happened and quickly investigated what had happened. Fortunately, the behind-the-scenes boss and the shareholders were relatively powerful. After inquiring through various friends, they found out that this little fresh meat had caused trouble. The most important thing was that the background of the other party he provoked was too powerful. It could be said that they could easily kill them. When they found out, they were shocked. They really didn't know how this idiot provoked the other party. Therefore, the behind-the-scenes boss and the shareholders quickly called to ask what was going on, but the little fresh meat and his assistant manager refused to admit it first. It was not until they told the truth that they realized how serious the matter was. After thinking about it, it seemed to be related to what happened last night, so they told the truth. Now that the truth was out, the boss and the shareholders were so angry that they scolded the little fresh meat. However, the trouble had already been caused. No matter what, they had to solve this problem. With their level, it was too difficult to directly contact the other party. Even if they could contact him, would a phone call and an apology solve the problem? They were all adults, so they should have some brains. Therefore, these shareholders used their connections. They couldn't just let the company collapse directly. After all, the annual profits were very considerable, and there were many cooperation projects in the future. In the end, a cousin of one of the shareholders knew Xia Ding and also knew the relationship between Xia Ding and the Qin family. He also knew that Xia Ding and Qin Sheng were roommates in college. In addition, he had helped Xia Ding in Shanghai before. As a result, they met today. At this moment, after Qin Sheng saw the little fresh meat, he said with interest, "Oh, it's you. I thought it was something important." Lao Zhao was the behind-the-scenes boss of this company. He was also a little powerful in the entertainment circle, and he also knew many big shots. However, in front of Qin Sheng, he was nothing. He was nothing. Otherwise, why would he be so humble? Lao Zhao quickly smiled apologetically and said, "Young Master Qin, it's all my fault that I didn't manage these artists well, so they provoked young Master Qin. I hope young Master Qin can be magnanimous and don't lower yourself to the level of these actors. I will discipline them well when I go back." After hearing this, Qin Sheng sneered and said, "Brother Zhao, he was not like this yesterday." After hearing this, Lao Zhao turned around and glared at the little fresh meat. Without hesitation, he slapped his face and said, "Are you King dumb? Kneel down and apologize to young Master Qin. Even if you want to die, I don't want to die with you." Old Zhao had used all his strength in that slap. A red handprint instantly appeared on the handsome little fresh meat's face. If his fans were to see this, wouldn't they be heartbroken? At this moment, stars and little fresh meats were all farts. In fact, this kind of thing was not strange at all. These stars and little fresh meats were idols in front of their fans, but they were nothing in front of the capital tycoons and the higher-level tycoons behind them. After all, there was no shortage of good-looking or beautiful stars in the entertainment circle. Every once in a while, new idols would appear. Who could guarantee that they would be outdated after a period of time? Moreover, there were all kinds of talent shows appearing continuously. As long as you had money and resources, any beautiful person could be packaged as a star. After Lao Zhao vented his anger, this handsome little fresh meat hesitated and knelt down with red eyes. He replied with a sad voice, "I'm sorry, young Master Qin. I was wrong. It's all my fault for offending you. Please forgive me." When he knelt down, his dignity was already gone. Until now, he still hadn't come back to his senses. He didn't expect that the seemingly ordinary man he met yesterday had such a powerful background. Even his boss and shareholders had to behave themselves in front of him. It could be seen that he had provoked a powerful person. If he was given another chance, he would never do that. However, it was impossible to reverse the situation. He could only think of a way to solve it. Was dignity important? It was very important. But for him, it was nothing compared to his future. Was he willing to give up everything now including money, status, vanity, and so on. He was used to the scenery of a high place, and he would never want to go back to his previous life. Therefore, in order to solve this matter thoroughly, in order to appease Qin Sheng and make him stop making trouble for the company and him, he finally gritted his teeth and kowtowed to Qin Sheng. Every time he kowtowed, he could hear the sound. It seemed that he would lose if his head did not bleed today. Qin Sheng saw this scene and sneered. "What? Are you threatening me? Why do I feel like I'm bullying you?" When Lao Zhao saw the little fresh meat kowtowing, he thought that this kid was flexible. But after hearing Qin Sheng's words, his face changed. He came to his senses and kicked the little fresh meat directly. He scolded, "Who the hell asked you to kowtow? Are you looking for death?" The little fresh meat was directly kicked to the ground by Lao Zhao. He grimaced in pain, but did not dare to say anything. He could only sob in a low voice. Today's matter had trampled all the pride he had in recent years to the ground. At this time, he realized that he was really nothing. He was a little disheartened for a moment. But before he came, his boss had already said that if he could not solve today's matter, he would not be able to work in the entertainment industry anymore. He should just pack up and go home, because no one would want him anymore. Qin Sheng saw this scene and felt nothing. He said calmly, acting. After saying this, Lao Zhao's whole back was wet. If he made a fool of himself today, it would be even more troublesome. Lao Zhao quickly ran to Qin Sheng and said, "Young Master Qin, how dare I act in front of you? I'm really sincerely apologizing to you. As long as you can forgive us, we can do anything." On the other side, Xiaoding had been smiling and watching the show. He had seen a lot of stars and idols in Shanghai, especially this kind of little fresh meat. After all, Shanghai was the economic and financial center. How could a place with capital lack these people? Today, he just wanted to return a favor. If Qin Sheng was angry because of this, he would have to reply to Qin Sheng later. Therefore, he only cared about bringing Lao Zhao here. As for the rest of the matters, he would leave it to Lao Zhao. Whether Qin Sheng could calm down or not had nothing to do with him. He would not say anything good either, but he knew Qin Sheng's temper. If this went on, he might really make Qin Sheng angry. He could only say, "Lao Zhao, do you really think this kind of apology is enough?" If the person he met yesterday was not Lao Qin, but other ordinary people, what would he do? Not to mention apologizing, I guess he would hit him when he was down. Lao Zhao said awkwardly, "Young Master Xia, how is that possible? Our company is very strict with our artists." Strict? I didn't see it. It said that the entertainment circle is messy. I think it's all because of you people. How can such a little fresh meat be an idol for fans? He will only lead the fans astray. Therefore, your company should be careful in the future. It's better not to meet this kind of people with bad character. Xiaoding shook his head and said. Lao Zhao quickly nodded and said, "Definitely, definitely. A fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. Don't worry, young Master Xia." At this time, Qin Sheng did not pay attention to Lao Xia. He walked slowly to the front of the little fresh meat, looked at him directly, and said, "Do you hate me now?" The little fresh meat did not dare to say that he hated him. He quickly shook his head and denied it. Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Don't deny it. I know you hate me. Maybe I hate your boss too. If you have a chance, if I fall into your hands, I guess you will pay me back double, right? But don't worry, you won't have such a chance, at least not in this lifetime. I can ignore what happened yesterday. But if I hear any bad news about you in the future, I will let it go together." When Lao Zhao heard this, he knew that Qin Sheng had forgiven them. He quickly shouted, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and thank young Master Qin. Fortunately, you met young Master Qin. If you met someone else, you really don't know how you died." The little fresh meat was so happy that he cried, "Thank you, young Master Qin. Thank you, young Master Qin. I promise it will never happen again." Qin Sheng ignored him. Even if he and Lao Zhao hated him, so what? If there were so many people who hated him, they were nothing. At this time, Xiaoding seized the opportunity and said, "Lao Zhao, young Master Qin has forgiven you. Aren't you going to say something?" He would not let Lao Zhao let it go. After all, Lao Zhao had already told him his bottom line. Did he still want to pretend to be ignorant? Of course, Lao Zhao knew what Xiaoding meant. He said directly, "Young Master Qin, Although we have some misunderstandings, to express our apology, we are willing to give you 15% of the company's shares as compensation. I hope young Master Qin will accept it. Qin Sheng slowly stood up and walked out without looking back. Lao Xia, this is for you. After saying this, Qin Sheng directly left the room. Xia Ding hurriedly followed. Before he left, he didn't forget to pat old Zhao's shoulder. His meaning couldn't be clearer. Chapter 1163. Qin Sheng did not know Lao Zhao's background, nor did he know how powerful his film company or agency was. Even if they were powerful, could they be more powerful than the companies under the Qin family? Probably any one of them would be more powerful than his company. Therefore, Qin Sheng really did not care about these shares. Qin Sheng did not want to eat all kinds of meat. He did not want to get himself into trouble. Qin Sheng still knew his bottom line. After all, the entertainment circle was a place of trouble. Qin Sheng did not care about those little benefits. If something happened to Lao Zhao's company, although it had nothing to do with the Qin family, it would not be worth it if people insinuated the Qin family because of this little benefit. After all, there are many people with ulterior motives. However, Qin Sheng could not let Lao Zhao take advantage of it. Therefore, he gave these shares to Xia Ding. Anyway, this guy's circle was more complicated and he was more popular in Shanghai. It was more suitable to give it to him. Moreover, it was a way to tell Xia Ding that he did not care about him being a peacemaker. Qin Sheng swaggered off. This little thing took up a lot of his time. Xia Ding followed him out. He had done what he needed to do. Fortunately, Qin Sheng gave him face. After Qin Sheng and Xia Ding left, Lao Zhao heaved a long sigh of relief and sat on the chair. He wiped the sweat on his forehead with his hand and glanced at the little fresh meat kneeling on the ground. He scolded angrily. My reputation has been ruined by you. If you dare to make trouble for me in the future, not only will I ban you, I will bury you alive. When the little fresh meat heard this, he was shocked. After experiencing this incident, he promised to be polite to everyone in the future because he was really scared. After Xia Ding got out of the room, he directly put his arm around Qin Sheng's shoulder and said, I promise it will only be this once. I really had no choice but to owe that person a favor. Just in time. We are brothers. You don't have to worry about such a little thing. Qin Sheng said angrily. Although Xia Ding said so, he knew Qin Sheng's character very well. Hence, he would not dare to accept this kind of thing in the future. He smiled bitterly and said, I'm not afraid that you will be angry. I heard that you were quite angry yesterday. It's all in the past. But I have to remind you that I'm giving you these shares. Don't keep any female stars as your mistresses in the future, lest Qin Xin comes to me later. Qin Sheng said coldly. Xia Ding said loudly, F***CK, I've turned over a new leaf, okay? Qin Sheng did not bother to pay attention to him. Anyway, he did not know what had happened to Xia Ding in the past few years. Who knew if this guy had messed around? When Qin Sheng and Xia Ding were about to leave the private home cuisine restaurant called Breeze and Drizzle, they happened to meet a few guests who were chatting happily and wittily when they walked to the entrance of the second courtyard. They looked very young, 3 men and 2 women. Judging from his attire and temperament, he must be fey. Rich and noble people were probably the children of rich families. Qin Sheng and Xia Ding had originally taken a detour. However, they inadvertently saw the man in the middle. Qin Sheng subconsciously recognized this man. He really did not expect to meet him here. It was really true that enemies did not enter the door. They had just returned to Beijing, and they met this old rival. At this time, the 5 men and women who were walking toward them also saw Qin Sheng and Xia Ding, but the others did not take them seriously. They continued to talk and laugh as they walked inside. At most, they would walk around Qin Sheng and Xia Ding. They were not crabs who walked sideways. But at this time, the man in the middle seemed to recognize Qin Sheng and was directly stunned on the spot. When the others saw him stop, they were a little confused and did not know what was going on. After 3 years, they met again? No, it should be an enemy. Brother Su, what's wrong? The woman next to him asked in a low voice. The man who was called Brother Su did not respond, but continued to stare at Qin Sheng opposite him. At this time, The man on the right frowned and said, "Brother Su, is this your friend?" Brother Su still did not speak. Qin Sheng recognized this Brother Su. So did Xia Ding. He somewhat regretted choosing to come here today. He really did not expect to meet here. What bad luck. At this time, Qin Sheng continued to walk forward. He did not pay attention to the others present and directly walked up to Brother Su. "Master Su, how have you been?" This man who was called Brother Su was none other than Su Xingwei, who had fallen out with Qin Sheng in the past. After 3 years, Su Xingwei did not seem to have changed much. He was still so elegant and handsome. However, the Su family was not as strong as before. It was like the sun was setting in the west. Su Xingwei's face was gloomy, but he still replied calmly. "A few days ago, I heard that you came back. I didn't expect to meet you here today. It's really fate." Su Xingwei looked very bright in white short-sleeved shirt and sports pants with white coconuts. Who knew how this man had tried to kill Qin Sheng in the past? Therefore, one could not judge a person by his appearance, but his heart was the most important. What had happened in the past was still vivid in Qin Sheng's mind. The Su family could be said to have played a great role in the internal and external troubles of the Chong, in school and the internal school. How could Qin Sheng forget what Su Xingwei had done? Therefore, Qin Sheng asked bluntly, "Young Master Su, are you very disappointed that I didn't die?" Originally, Su Xingwei's friends thought that he had met an old acquaintance and greeted him. But after hearing the conversation between the two of them, they understood what was going on no matter how stupid they were. However, they were not from the capital, so they did not know Qin Sheng. But they definitely knew Qin Sheng. Su Xingwei smiled bitterly and said, "Young Master Qin, you are too serious. It's not like we've killed each other's father. Why would I want you to die?" Hearing this, Qin Sheng laughed out loud and said, "Young Master Su, I haven't seen you for 3 years. You are a bit hypocritical. This is not the you I knew in the past." "I am still me, as always," Su Xingwei replied disapprovingly. Qin Sheng replied happily, "Okay, I hope young Master Su can still be the same. Otherwise, I will be so disappointed." After saying this, he nodded to the few friends beside Su Xingwei to show his respect. Then, he shook his head and smiled bitterly as he walked past Su Xingwei. Xia Ding glanced at Su Xingwei, his eyes full of disdain. In the past 3 years, the Su family had suffered more than they had imagined. 2 of their fathers had been investigated one after another. Was young Master Su still the young Master Su he used to be? Therefore, in front of Qin Sheng, he had long lost the confidence he had in the past. Humans had to admit defeat when it was time to do so. If it was in the past, when Qin Sheng and Su Xingwei met by chance today, the atmosphere would definitely be at loggerheads. How could it be so easy? Everyone was very clear that these rich playboys in Sijio City had the capital to be domineering because of the glory accumulated by their fathers. Without the stability and foundation of their families, who would dare to be so domineering? Those Phoenix men who climbed up step by step from the bottom. Which of them did not bury their ambitions in their hearts and put their dignity and conceit in their pockets? Therefore, without the protection of their families, they were really nothing. They could only tuck their tails between their legs and behave. In the past 3 years, Su Xingwei must have had a deep feeling about this. He, the once absolute young master Fengyun in Sijio City, had fallen from the altar step by step like this. After Xia Ding and Qin Sheng left, Su Xingwei stood in the same place for a long time without saying anything. To be honest, he really hoped that Qin Sheng would die, so that there would not be this meeting today. Although he had experienced such a scene many times in the past 3 years, he had never been so ashamed as he was today. Compared to other people's sarcasm and ridicule and adding insult to injury, what Qin Sheng had done today was nothing at all. But because of this, he became more and more embarrassed. It was because of the Qin family that the Su family could become what it was today. He, Su Xingwei, was willing to face everyone except Qin Sheng, especially when Qin Sheng was standing in front of him as a winner, while he was a complete loser. Su Xingwei was not willing to face Qin Sheng. What he could not stand was Qin Sheng's eyes, the kind of eyes that ignored him because he was already no match for Qin Sheng. After a long time, Su Xingwei let out a long sigh, then turned around and left with a smile. His friends asked in confusion, "Brother Su, what happened? Where are you going?" But Su Xingwei ignored them and left without looking back. Chapter 1164. Most people knew that it was easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. But in this life, climbing from the bottom to the top was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, but falling from the top to the dust was as easy as lifting one's hand. It was just that not everyone could bear the feeling of falling from the bottom, let alone Su Xingwei, who had been pampered since he was young. If they were the kind of people who started from scratch, rose to the top, and then fell back down, they were originally small characters. Even if they fell, they would have a higher starting point than before. As long as they could adjust their mentality, they would be able to start all over again. However, Su Xingwei couldn't. His starting point was the ending point of others. He had never experienced the hardships of the bottom. Now, as his family fell, his life was getting worse and worse, like the fallen leaves in autumn, getting more and more miserable and withering. Especially this kind of slow cutting of flesh with a knife was the most uncomfortable. He couldn't go up, and he couldn't go down. Those who used to be at the same level as him had abandoned him, not to mention those who mocked and ridiculed him. He couldn't get along with those who used to be inferior to him. He couldn't lower himself to be a bootlicker. Sometimes dignity and face were more important than anything else. This was Su Xingwei's situation. Fortunately, he had 2 or 3 real friends. Otherwise, Su Xingwei would really sigh about the fickleness of the world. However, who could he blame for all this? Su Xingwei used to be insufferably arrogant and look down on everyone. The Su family was too self-righteous. They thought that they could overthrow the Qin family and control the Chong, insist them by following the 6th uncle, and finally enjoy the benefits. Unfortunately, his table manners were too unsightly. Although Qin Sheng wasn't clear about Su Xingwei's situation, he could roughly guess it. Even Master Long was struggling at death's door, not to mention the Su family. Su Xingwei, who used to be his rival, was now in such dire straits. Qin Sheng was not interested in Su Xingwei at all. Su Xingwei, who was arrogant and domineering in front of him, had disappeared. What Su Xingwei feared most now was that Qin Sheng would take revenge on him, right? However, at least for now, Qin Sheng didn't have time. The next evening, Qin Sheng took Song Ryu to the airport to pick up Uncle Lin, Annie Wong, and Xin. Uncle Lin and Annie Wong still lived in Xi'an. After all, they had lived in this place for so many years, and no one was willing to leave easily. Moreover, old people preferred a familiar environment. However, Song Ryu would go to Xi'an to visit them every once in a while, which was what Qin Sheng should do. Song Ryu did everything she could. Every week, she would call Lin Shi and Wang Li 2 or 3 times to take care of them. Sometimes she would take them to Beijing. After all, Xin was also in Beijing. As for Xin, she chose to return to Shanghai to work after finishing her postgraduate studies at Tsinghua University. She didn't stay in Beijing or Xi'an, which surprised many people. No one knew why Xin didn't want to stay in Beijing. She had to spend, to be, life. 2 were in life in Beijing. She was, by. She didn't show. In life. Without a way. Back to her home, she had felt. Besides, the Zhu family and the Song family were not easy to deal with. Song Ryu had found Xin's supervisor in person. She used to be the vice president of the student union of Tsinghua University, so she was very familiar with those leaders and professors. Besides, those old professors liked her very much and were willing to help her. Besides, Song Ryu had a powerful background and was now in a department with real power. Song Ryu often came to Tsinghua University to visit Xin. She often took her out for meals and shopping. She made a lot of friends, so her life in Beijing was not too boring. Apart from Song Ryu, Qin Ran and Qin Jing also treated Xin as their biological sister. Every weekend, they would take Xin to their home and buy all kinds of food and clothes for her. Qin Ran was worried that Xian might not be used to living on campus, so she renovated a house near Tsinghua University in advance and let Xian live there. As for Qin Jing, she and Xin were best friends. The two girls were about the same age, so they could play together. Qin Jing often stayed at Xin's place instead of going home. Therefore, Xin had been very happy in Beijing during the past 2 years. She had integrated into Qin Sheng's life circle, except that Qin Sheng was not there. However, no matter if it was Xin or others, they would not talk about Qin Sheng when they were together, so that they would not be sad. Now Qin Sheng was finally back. When Xin heard the news, she flew from Shanghai to Xi and as soon as possible. Then she took her parents to Beijing to reunite with her brother. At the domestic arrival gate of the capital airport, Qin Sheng held Song Ruyu's hand and waited quietly for Uncle Lin, Annie Wang, and Xin to come out. Today, Song Ryu was dressed very elegantly. She was really the kind of wife that everyone imagined. So many people turned their heads to look at her. However, all her thoughts were on the man beside her. As for Qin Sheng, although he had disappeared for 3 years, he was happy that his family and friend were all fine. Finally, Qin Sheng saw Uncle Lin, Annie Wang, and Xin walking out slowly. Uncle Lin and Annie Wang walked in front, and Xin followed behind with her suitcase. Although Uncle Lin and Annie Wang were a little older than before, they seemed to be much more energetic than before. After all, they no longer lived like before. Now, they lived a leisurely life without so much pressure and worry. What about Xin? She had grown up, matured, and became beautiful. Every child would become an adult. Xin was no longer a little girl who loved to cry. She had become a strong woman in a company of the world's top 500. Xin walked quickly to the exit. At this time, Lin Shi, Wang Li, and Xin also saw Qin Sheng and Song Ryu behind. When the family met again, no one said any sad words. They just hugged each other tightly. There were smiles on their faces and tears in their eyes. As long as they could reunite, that was enough. Seeing this scene, Song Ryu could not help but feel a little emotional. On the way back to the Qin family's West Mountain villa, they sat in the same business car in order to chat more. They had a good time talking and laughing on the way. Lin Shi, Wang Li, and Xin did not mention what had happened in the past, nor did they ask Qin Sheng about what had happened in the past 3 years. They did not complain or reprimand Qin Sheng, as if the past 3 years had been erased. Lin Shi and Wang Li already knew that Qin Sheng and Song Ryu were going to get married. After all, they were Qin Sheng's adoptive parents. Whether it was the Qin family or the Zhu family, they would take the initiative to inform them and invite them to come early to prepare for the two children's weddings. After all, Lin Shi and Wang Li had been looking forward to this day for many years. If they did not attend it in person, they would feel somewhat disappointed and regretful. After all, they had watched Qin Sheng grow up and raised him as their own son. Qin Sheng sat in the front passenger seat. Lin Shi and Wang Li sat in the middle. Xin and Song Ryu sat in the back. The two little sisters talked about their private topics. After all, they were very familiar with each other now. Qin Sheng said half-jokingly, Xin, I heard from your sister that you're a postgraduate in Tsinghua University. At that time, the number of boys chasing after you will line up from the gate of Tsinghua University to the gate of Peking University. Do you have a crush? Brother, why do you ask this as soon as you come back? Xin complained. Qin Sheng said with a smile, I'm your brother. It's natural for me to care about you. Besides, you're not young anymore. It's time to think about marriage. Xin directly said, Brother, you'd better take care of yourself first. If you give birth to a little nephew or niece for me, I'll get married immediately. How about that? Qin Sheng really wanted to say, I've already fulfilled your wish for you. Your little niece is already more than 2 years old. But how dare he? However, since Xin could ask this, it was obvious that she did not know about Yuan. After all, many people knew about it. When they returned to the Qin family's villa, Qin Changxing, Zhao Anji, Qin Ran, and Qin Jing were already waiting for them at the door. They had always been very respectful to Lin Shi and Wang Li. After all, they had raised Qin Sheng for so many years. It could be said that the Qin family was greatly indebted to them. As soon as they got out of the car, Qin Jing ran over to say hello to Lin Shi and Wang Li. Then she directly hugged Xin, who was behind them, and shouted, "Big girl, I missed you so much." Xin said happily, "Arya, I missed you too. You stood me up last time. This time, I'll treat you to a big meal." Qin Jing secretly kissed Xin and said happily, "Oh, I got it. I'll treat you to the best." Because Qin Jing's nickname was Yaya, they called one big girl and the other Arya, which showed how close they were. At this time, Qin Changxing and Zhao Anji had already greeted Lin Shi and Wang Li with a smile. Gong Sun, who still stayed in Beijing, was also here today. He also greeted Lin Shi and Wang Li. The scene was really lively. Everyone talked and laughed into the villa. At this moment, the dining room had already prepared a sumptuous dinner. They directly went to the dining room and sat down according to the host and guest. To be honest, Qin Sheng had not been so lively for a long time. Everyone present was his family and friends, and there were also people who cared about him. How could he not be happy? Qin Changxing and Zhao Anji naturally sat on the main seats. Except for Lin Shi and Wang Li, who sat on the left, the others also sat casually. There are not so many rules. Qin Changxing had prepared several bottles of Mao Tai and red wine. How could they not drink in such an atmosphere tonight? Qin Changxing had abstained from drinking for many years in Mount Wutai. However, after returning to Beijing, he did not have so many taboos. When he saw his old friends, he would take the initiative to drink a few mouthfuls. Since he was already back, he did not care so much. Moreover, as long as there was Buddha in the heart, there was Buddha everywhere. Everyone filled their glasses. Qin Changxing stood up with a smile and said, "Today's scene is really rare. On behalf of the Qin family, I thank Lao Lin and his wife for taking care of Qin Sheng for so many years. Welcome to Beijing again." Secondly, Qin Sheng finally came home safely. If he did not come back, I did not know how to face so many people. Finally, of course, the marriage of Qin Sheng and Ruyu. Today, we wish them a happy wedding in advance. I hope they can hold hands and grow old together. Cheers! The others looked at Qin Sheng and Song Ruyu at the same time and said their heartfelt blessings. Cheers! Qin Sheng and Song Ruyu looked at each other and also raised their glasses and drank up. To be honest, seeing such a scene, Qin Sheng was really touched. In the future, he would definitely not be so impulsive. Since so many people cared about him, he could not let them worry. Chapter 1165. In the past 3 years in Sichuan, Qin Sheng could be said to be lonely and destitute. He lived like an ascetic monk. Moreover, he had even lost his memories of the past. To be honest, ordinary people would not be able to handle it. It was lucky that he did not go crazy. Fortunately, Qin Sheng had his aunt, Qin Changqing, to accompany him in the past 3 years. In addition, there was a Tibetan Buddhist temple in that small town. Qin Sheng often went there to relieve his boredom, so he did not lose himself. Perhaps it was because he had lost his memory that Qin Sheng could stay there for 3 years. If Qin Sheng did not lose his memory, he might not even be able to stay there for 1 or 2 months. This might be Qin Changqing's consideration. She had to suppress Qin Sheng, just like how the old master had suppressed Qin Sheng for so many years. This was a family dinner. Although there were 2 families because of Qin Sheng, they became one family, which made the desolate Qin family more and more lively and warm. If Qin Chang'an was here, it would be perfect. Perhaps this was what everyone in the Qin family was thinking at the moment. After dinner, everyone was a bit unsatisfied. Qin Changxing dragged Lin Shi to the living room to continue drinking and chatting. Gong Sun and Chang Baji also accompanied them. However, Zhao Anji and Wang Li reminded them to drink less. Fortunately, when they were eating just now, they took advantage of the situation and did not go overboard. Zhao Anji and Wang Li were chatting in the living room on the 2nd floor. Song Ruyu, the daughter-in-law, naturally accompanied the 2 elders. Qin Ran, Qin Jing, and Xin sat on the sofa and chatted. Occasionally, they heard the elders talking about interesting things and would make fun of them. What about Qin Sheng? He sat alone on the balcony, poured himself a cup of tea, and stared blankly. After a while, Xinxin ran over and sat opposite Qinsheng. She asked casually, "Brother, what are you thinking about? I'm going to introduce you to a boyfriend and marry you soon." Qinsheng took a sip of tea and looked up at his silly sister, who had grown up. Xinxin shrugged and said, "Brother, here you go again." Qinsheng stopped smiling and asked casually, "Why did you choose to work in Shanghai? For you, there should be more opportunities in Beijing. Or is it because you're not comfortable here?" Qinsheng was telling the truth. As long as Xinxin stayed in Beijing, with the resources of the Qin family and the Song family, they could arrange a suitable job for her no matter what. Xinxin pursed her lips and smiled. "Brother, I know what you mean. I also like Beijing very much. In the past 2 years when I was studying in Beijing, Sister Ryu, Sister Qinran, and other elders all took special care of me. Sometimes I felt embarrassed, but in comparison, I like Shanghai more. Maybe I'm more familiar with Shanghai. Besides, I have a lot of friends in Shanghai, such as Sister Qinyan, Sister Hanbing, Brother Hao Lei, and Brother Xiaoding. You don't have to worry about who will bully me. I'm your sister. Who dares to bully me?" Xinxin said happily. As Qinsheng's sister, she had benefited a lot. Qinsheng shook his head and said, "You've grown up. I won't care about you anymore." Since Xin had already made up her mind, Qinsheng did not say anything more. He heard that his sister, Qinran, had originally intended to give the keys to the apartment in Pudong to Xin. It was closer to where she worked. Qinsheng and Lin Su used to live there. However, Uncle Lin did not accept it. After politely rejecting it, he bought another apartment for Xin. Although the two families were already a family, the Lin family was still unwilling to owe the Qin family too much. At this time, Xinxin glanced at the women who were chatting over there and said to Qinsheng in a low voice, "Brother, now that you've come back and decided to marry Sister Ryu, I don't want to say more about your feelings, but I think you should say something to Sister Lin Su. At least, you should meet her and give her an explanation. I don't want to see her sad." Qinxing knew what Xinxin was worried about. She did not want to let Lin Su down. However, he could not tell Xinxin some things directly. He just said, "You don't have to worry about these things. I know what to do." Xinxin curled her lips and did not say anything more. The three members of the Lin family came to Beijing and naturally lived in the Shishan villa. The Qin family was big and had many rooms. At about 10 o'clock, Qinsheng accompanied Song Ryu for a walk downstairs. Song Ryu said lightly, "Uncle Lin and Annie Wang have no one to take care of them in Xian. How about we take them to Beijing? In this way, Xinxin will not have to suffer so much in the future." Qinsheng sighed and said, "I have thought about this before. However, they have been in Xian for so many years and have long been used to the familiar environment. I guess they are not very willing to do so. Unless Xinxin marries in Beijing in the future, maybe they will consider coming to Beijing." Song Ryu said half-jokingly, "Then find a boyfriend for Xinxin in Beijing." Qinsheng asked with interest, "Do you have a suitable one?" "It is not urgent. I will ask Xinxin first," Song Ryu said lightly. When they walked back, they saw Chun Beiwang standing at the door of the villa. Obviously, he had something to talk to Qinsheng about. Otherwise, he would not have come to the Shishan villa at night. Song Ryu nodded to Chun Beiwang sensibly and walked into the villa. Qinsheng threw a cigarette to Chun Beiwang and said with a smile, "Brother Chun, it's so late at night. What's so urgent that you have to come here in person?" The two of them smoked as they walked to the back of the villa. Chun Beiwang said honestly, "Young master, Elder Long has made some moves. It seems that Elder Long has noticed what happened in Chengdu, so the two of them are ready to take action. They want to cooperate with you, so they asked me to meet you." Qinsheng did not expect it to be so fast. He frowned and said, "How did you talk to them?" "I made it very clear to them that this is their internal affair and has nothing to do with the Qin family. Moreover, they're the Qin family's enemies. If they want the Qin family to help them, they have to show enough sincerity. There is no such cheap deal in the world. It's already good enough that the Qin family doesn't make trouble for them," Chun Beiwang said confidently. After all, the Qin family had the upper hand. Qin Sheng asked thoughtfully. How did they respond? They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. If Elder Long really wants to settle accounts with them, they'll have no choice but to fight to the death. Naturally, they'll agree to our terms first. As for the specifics, we'll have to wait and see, Chun Beiwang said truthfully. Qin Sheng asked casually, is old Long still alive? This old guy is quite good at holding on. He's on his last breath. Young master, you don't want him to die like this, do you? Chun Beiwang guessed. Of course, Qin Sheng did not want to see this old guy die like this. He wanted Elder Long to see him destroy everything with his own eyes. In the end, he would personally send the old guy on his last journey. Only in this way could he really avenge his mother. After thinking for a while, Qin Sheng decided, then let's meet them. You decide when to meet them. I'll go and see them at that time. Okay, I'll tell them now, Chun Beiwang said in a tone that was neither too light nor too heavy. After saying this, Chun Beiwang was ready to leave. Things could have been cleared up over the phone, but Chun Beiwang made a special trip here, which meant that he attached great importance to Qin Sheng. After all, he had not really become Qin Sheng's confidant yet. Just when Chun Beiwang was about to leave, Qin Sheng said with a smile, Brother Chun, thank you for what happened the day before yesterday. Of course, Qin Sheng was talking about that little fresh meat. However, for Chun Beiwang, what Qin Sheng asked him to do was a big deal. He did not dare to neglect it casually. He could only say that the little fresh meat did not have eyes and really thought that he was a big shot. Chun Beiwang did not dare to be arrogant. He said obediently, it's just my job. After Qin Sheng nodded, Chun Beiwang left alone. At least so far, Qin Sheng was quite satisfied with Chun Beiwang. In the next 2 days, Qin Sheng spent most of his time with Uncle Lin and Annie Wang. After all, they had not seen each other for 3 years. They missed Qin Sheng very much and needed him to accompany them more. After all, people were old and needed companionship. For the rest of the time, Qin Sheng accompanied Song Ruyu to choose a wedding dress. Of course, Qin Ran, Qin Jing, Xin Xin, Song Ruyu's cousin, and other advisors were also there. Qin Sheng was just a bystander. Anyway, they would not consider Qin Sheng's opinion. They insisted that Qin Sheng had the vision of a straight man, which made Qin Sheng not know whether to laugh or cry. However, there was a piece of news that made Qin Sheng very happy. That was his grandmother's health had gradually improved recently. His small aunt planned to let him see his grandmother in these 2 days. It happened that his uncle also came back from other places. Hearing the news, Qin Sheng was really happy from the bottom of his heart, but at the same time, he felt somewhat uneasy. Chapter 1166. Although Qin Sheng had seen his grandmother last time, the doctor didn't allow him to see her because of her physical condition. He could only stand outside the ward and watch her through the window for a while after she fell asleep. Seeing his extremely weak grandmother, Qin Sheng felt more guilty and distressed. It was said that the child wanted to raise his mother, but his parents were gone. Qin Sheng already had such a regret, which was his mother's early death. It was a deep pain in his heart and an irreparable regret. His grandmother was over 90 years old now. No one knew how long she could live. She might die tomorrow. Therefore, his grandmother needed company most at this time, and such opportunities were getting rarer and rarer. However, Qin Sheng had disappeared for 3 years. If his grandmother had passed away when he came back, how regretful would he be? Fortunately, his grandmother was still alive, which made him feel extremely lucky. At noon on the weekend, he arrived at the hospital with Song Ruyu half an hour earlier. When they arrived, Zhu Weiguo and Zhu Qingwen had already stayed in the hospital for more than an hour. Every time Zhu Weiguo came back from a business trip, the first thing he did was to visit his mother in the hospital. It had almost become a habit in the past 3 years. Filial piety was the most important of all virtues, especially for the Zhu siblings. Zhu Weiguo was usually busy, but he would accompany his mother whenever he had time. Zhu Qingwen also knew that her brother was busy with work. After all, it was difficult to be loyal and filial, so she took more time to accompany her mother. When the old lady lived in Shanghai, she would accompany her mother as long as she had nothing to do. She would come almost every other day. When the old lady was in poor health, she would accompany her mother every day without any complaints. Since the old lady came back to Beijing, Zhu Qingwen had come to Beijing once a week before she was transferred to work at Tsinghua University. She came to the hospital almost every day, as if she would feel uncomfortable if she didn't come to the hospital to accompany her mother. Therefore, the Zhu siblings were really filial. Of course, Zhu Wei's wife, Wu Yajun, was also very filial. Zhu Qingwen's husband, Zhu Changshun, was also busy with work, but he would accompany the old lady when he had time. After all, he could get to where he was today because of the Zhu family silent support. The elders were so filial, not to mention the other younger members of the Zhu family. Besides, they had spent more time with the old lady since childhood. After all, the old master had been in a high position at that time and didn't have much time to accompany them, so they had more leisure after he retired. Therefore, the children had a deeper relationship with the old lady. They would come to the hospital to visit the old lady every now and then. They would take the initiative to accompany the old lady if they had nothing to do. They had to work. If they didn't visit the old lady for a long time, the Zhu siblings would come to the hospital. In the waiting room of the hospital, Qin Sheng finally saw his uncle, whom he had not seen for a long time. Perhaps because he had just returned from a business trip, his uncle did not even bother to change his clothes and directly came to the hospital in his military uniform. There were several guards on duty at the door of the waiting room. When Qin Sheng and Song Ryu walked into the lounge, Zhu Weiwa didn't seem to be excited to see his nephew again after 3 years. He said calmly, "You're here. Sit down." Qin Sheng and Song Ryu walked over quickly. He greeted them respectfully. "Uncle, small aunt." Qin Sheng didn't know whether Zhu Weiwa was thinking about national affairs or worried about the old lady's health. He seemed to be a little absent-minded, which made Qin Sheng mistakenly think that this uncle was angry. After all, he had too many responsibilities that he couldn't shirk at that time. So it was no wonder that an accident happened. Who else could it be? In the end, the ones who were afraid were the ones who cared about him the most, especially the ones who made his grandmother worry too much. In order to ease the atmosphere, Zhu Qingwen took the initiative to ask, "Ryu, I heard that you have been choosing wedding dresses these days. How is it going?" In fact, Song Ryu didn't care about that. However, Qin Ran and the others said that they had to pay attention to it. After all, they would only get married once in their lives. How could they be so casual? Song Ryu, who was sitting next to Zhu Qingwen, replied, "My elder sister and the others have already chosen a wedding dress for me. It's just that the wedding dress is custom-made, so it will be some time before I see it." Zhu Qingwen said, half-jokingly, "I trust Ran's taste, but small aunt is really looking forward to seeing you in the wedding dress. I guess you will be very beautiful. After all, Ryu is beautiful. I don't know what good karma Qin Sheng has accumulated in his previous life." Every time when the Zhu family and the Qin family were in front of them, they would say the same thing. Song Ryu seemed to have gotten used to it. At this time, Zhu Weiwa looked at Qin Sheng and said, "Treat Ryu better in the future. You disappeared without a trace in the past 3 years, but Ryu bore all the pressure for you. Do you know how wrong she was?" "Uncle, I know. It's all my fault. I won't let Ryu down." Qin Sheng didn't dare to say anything more at this time. He had to promise obediently. Zhu Weiwa said with some emotion, 3 years have passed just like this. Your grandmother has been waiting for you for 3 years. I'm really afraid that she won't be able to wait until the day you come back. Maybe she has been waiting for you with this breath all the time. I'm afraid that when she sees you, her breath will also be gone." This was what everyone in the Zhu family was worried about. The old lady was like a lamp that had run out of oil. Therefore, sometimes the Zhu family hoped that Qin Sheng would come back earlier, and sometimes they hoped that Qin Sheng would come back later. However, these things were destined not to be decided by them. Moreover, birth, aging, illness, and death were common things in human beings. Qin Sheng didn't know what to say. He was also afraid that such a situation would happen, which would make him a sinner. At this time, Zhu Weiwa said lightly, "Go in. Your grandmother is already waiting for you." Qin Sheng hesitated for a few seconds. What did his uncle mean? Zhu Qingwen explained. Your uncle was afraid that your grandmother would not be able to accept the news of your sudden appearance. So he told your grandmother in advance this morning so that she could be mentally prepared. The doctor also said the same thing. He was afraid that she would be too emotional to see you. At the same time, he was also testing your grandmother's physical condition. Hearing this, Qin Sheng understood what was going on. After thinking about it carefully, it made sense. In this way, everyone could rest assured. Qin Sheng stood up slowly and looked at his uncle and small aunt with a complicated feeling. Finally, he walked to the ward with heavy steps. Song Ryu was a little worried. Zhu Qingwen timely said, Ryu, you go with him. Song Ryu hurriedly stood up and followed Qin Sheng into the ward. Maybe the old lady would be in a better mood when she saw her. In the ward, 2 nurses were accompanying the old lady. They were all nurses carefully selected by the hospital and took care of the old lady in every possible way. For patients like the old lady, the hospital would have a professional medical team to take care of them. It could be said that the patient condition was monitored 24 hours a day. Qin Sheng slowly opened the door of the ward. When he saw his grandmother lying on the bed, he subconsciously stopped and could not move his legs. At this time, the old lady also felt someone coming in. She instinctively looked at the door of the ward. When she saw that it was the grandson that she had been longing for day and night, the old lady's eyes instantly froze. All her eyes were on the grandson that she loved the most. It seemed that she was unwilling to leave him for a second. It seemed that she was afraid of him the next second. He disappeared. She had waited for 3 years. Finally, this silly grandson appeared. In the beginning, they lied to her that Qin Sheng had gone abroad. But if he had gone abroad, at least they could contact him. Even if her grandson was at the end of the world, he would definitely call her or send her a video call. But why didn't he? Later, they could not hide it anymore. They said that Qin Sheng had an accident and was missing. At that time, she felt that the sky had collapsed. How could something happen to him? How could he be missing? My poor grandson had just come back for a short time. How could he be missing again? What on earth was going on? Under her tough questioning, the others told her the truth and told her what had happened. Only then did she realize how serious the situation was. They all said that he was just missing and nothing had happened to him. But she did not believe it. She felt that everyone was lying to her. Something must have happened to her poor grandson. At that time, she almost died. She did not know how to explain it to the old man and her daughter. How could she have the face to see them? Because of this, she was in a coma for a week, which shocked everyone. When she woke up later, old Master Song appeared with Qin Changxing. Qin Changxing swore that Qin Sheng was safe and sound, but could not come back for the time being. He told her that she must believe that Qin Sheng would come back sooner or later. At first, she did not believe it, but after old Master Song said it, she believed it. This wait went on for 3 years. The others did not believe that Qin Sheng was fine. Maybe he was already dead. They did not believe that Qin Sheng could come back. But she firmly believed that her grandson would definitely come back, and he would come back safe and sound. She had countless dreams in the past 3 years. In her dreams, her grandson told her, "Grandma, you have to be well and wait for Sheng-Er to come back." So she never gave up. So she did not dare to leave. She was afraid that her grandson would be sad if he did not see her when he came back. So she waited. She had been waiting. Today, she waited. In fact, everyone was worried that something would happen to her because she was too excited about Qin Sheng's coming back. She knew her health condition better than anyone else. She did not want her children or her grandson to worry. So she had thought about it many times. If her grandson came back one day, she would be calm, as if they met each other normally. So when her son and daughter told her in the morning that Qin Sheng had come back, he had come back a few days ago. But because she was not in good health, she did not dare to let Qin Sheng see her. She just peeped at him outside the ward. She was stunned for a few seconds when she heard the news. It would be a lie to say that she was not excited. How could she not be excited? Her eyes turned red, but she wiped away her tears. She smiled and said, "It's good that he is back. I know my grandson will be fine." Then she forced herself to calm down and not be too excited. Therefore, she had been waiting for her grandson since the morning. She had calmed down a long time ago. She felt that it was enough as long as he came back. At this moment, when she really saw her grandson, she was very calm. After she came to her senses, she waved at her grandson with a smile in her eyes and on her face. My Sheng is back. Hearing this, Qin Sheng could not stand it anymore. He directly knelt on the ground with a flop and said guiltily, Grandma, I am not filial. I made you worry. Chapter 1167. The old lady was over 90 years old. The old lady was already more than 90 years old and had experienced too many ups and downs. What kind of parting of life and death had she not seen before? She just couldn't let go of this poor grandson. Maybe it was because of Qin Sheng's experience in these years, or maybe it was because of the guilt of her daughter's death. The old lady was most worried about him and felt sorry for him. She hoped that this grandson could be safe and happy in this life, so that she could face the old man and her daughter calmly in the future. However, Qin Sheng had a bad fate. He left Beijing when he was young and grew up alone with his grandfather. After he grew up, he wandered from place to place and experienced all kinds of setbacks and tribulations. He almost died several times. Later, he finally returned to the Qin family and thought that he could live a happy and comfortable life from then on. However, he encountered the trouble of the Qin family again. In the end, he walked around the gate of hell again. In fact, Qin Sheng was very clear that his grandmother was over 90 years old. He didn't want her to worry, nor did he want anyone who cared about him to be afraid. However, he was not the goddess of fate and couldn't arrange his own life. He could only try his best to avoid it. If Qin Sheng could choose again, he would still choose to go to Ningbo, because it was something he had to do. Lin Su was his beloved woman. He had already let her down. How could he let her down again? Furthermore, old Madame Lin had treated him well. Back when he was still a poor loser, only old Madame Lin had supported him and Lin Su without any hesitation. Now that old Lady Lin had passed away, Qin Sheng had to send her off for the last time. Otherwise, he would feel guilty. However, if he went to Ningbo again, he wouldn't be so careless. He would definitely take Lao Chong and the others with him. These were all in the future. There was no medicine for regret in the world. What had happened could not be changed. What he could do now was to face it calmly and try his best to make up for those regrets and mistakes. At this moment, the old lady was not as calm as everyone expected. It was because she had gradually accepted the news in the morning. Secondly, she told herself not to be so excited when she saw Qin Sheng in the morning. She knew the condition of her body and knew that everyone was worried about her, especially her grandson. If something happened to her today, her grandson would feel guilty for the rest of his life. The others might even blame him. That was why she could be so calm. However, she did not expect him to suddenly kneel down. I'm sorry for calling you Grandma. I'm unfilial and made you worry. Hearing this, the old lady felt extremely distressed. Of course, she knew that Qin Sheng did not do it on purpose. It was just an accident, so she never blamed Qin Sheng. The old lady took a deep breath to calm herself down. She quickly waved her hand and said, Shenger, what are you doing? Get up, get up. Qin Sheng did not get up. He did not know how to face his grandmother. It was not easy for his grandmother to see him after more than 20 years. Not long after they reunited, they parted again. This time, it had been another 3 years. How could Qin Sheng not feel guilty? Qin Sheng said again, Grandma, it's all Sheng Er's fault. He made you worry for so long. It's all Sheng Er's fault that he took so long to come back. The old lady was a little emotional as she said, I don't blame you. Get up quickly. Come here and let me have a look at you. Qin Sheng still had no intention of getting up. The old lady hastily ordered, Ryu, help Sheng Er up. Don't let him kneel anymore. What are you doing? Song Ryu was also moved at this moment. She knew that the old lady loved Qin Sheng the most. It was not only because Qin Sheng's mother passed away early, but also because Qin Sheng had left Beijing when he was young and lacked family warmth and affection. Other children, whether they were from the Qin family or the Zhu family, had lived a carefree life since they were young because of the background of the Qin family and the Zhu family. However, Qin Sheng had suffered a lot and gone through a lot of hardships before he finally returned to the Qin family. Song Ruyu quietly wiped away her tears and quickly helped Qin Sheng up. Qin Sheng, get up. Don't make Grandma too excited. Qin Sheng came to his senses. He was most worried about his grandmother's health. He slowly stood up. The old lady smiled and said, "Come here, come here." Qin Sheng quickly walked to the bedside. The old lady was anxious to get up and hold Qin Sheng's hands. Qin Sheng took the initiative to hold his grandmother's thin hands and said, "Grandma, I'm sorry." The old lady did not complain or blame him at all. She said happily, "Don't say sorry to me. You're my Sheng-er. I'm very happy that I can see you. Do you know what I'm most afraid of is not seeing my Sheng? I also said that I would see you two get married. I'm afraid that I won't be able to see you." Qin Sheng said firmly, "Grandma, I promise that I won't disappear anymore. I won't let you worry about me anymore. Ryu and I are already preparing for our wedding. Grandma, you will definitely see it. Grandma, you also said that you will give us a baby." Zhu Weiguo and Zhu Qingwen had told her this news in the morning. The old lady replied happily, Okay. I'm waiting for you to get married. In this way, I can leave with peace of mind. If I can see your baby, I'll be more satisfied. But I'm old and can't give you a baby." Song Ryu was already sitting by the bedside. She said obediently, "Grandma, you're not good. The doctor said that you can live for many years. You kids only know how to make an old lady like me happy. How could I not know about my body? But I'm already satisfied to live to this age. It's God's charity to live one more day. Now I can see my Sheng, come back and see you two get married. I'm really satisfied in my life." The old lady let out a long sigh. Qin Sheng muttered, "Grandma, you'll definitely get better. I forbid you to say such words." Okay. I won't say such discouraging words. I'll live well," the old lady said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Qin Sheng finally smiled. He was very happy to finally see his grandmother today. The most important thing was that the situation he was most worried about did not happen. Otherwise, he would not be able to face his other relatives. At this time, Qin Sheng asked, "Grandma, do you really not blame me? Why should I blame you? You're my Sheng-er. As long as I can see you're fine, I'm already very happy." The old lady patted Qin Sheng's hand and said. Song Ryu said softly, "Grandma, he knows he's wrong. If he does this again in the future, I won't forgive him first." The old lady said happily, "Ryu, I know you've suffered a lot in these years. Now that Qin Sheng is back, I'll let him make it up to you. You two must be fine. I can't imagine how happy I'll be to see you two together." The small book kiosk that his friends had used before had been closed. Now, they were basically using them to exchange for source divine weapons. Qin Sheng said seriously, "Grandma, don't worry. We'll be fine." The old lady nodded kindly and then asked, "Sheng, tell me how you've been the past 3 years. Did you suffer a lot of grievances and hardships? Did anyone bully you? If anyone bullies you, just tell me." The old lady nodded kindly and kindly said, "Sheng, tell me." Qin Sheng said in a hurry, "Grandma, don't worry. I've been fine in the past 3 years. I haven't suffered any hardships. I'm so smart. Who can bully me? Don't worry." The old lady complained on purpose. "Then why didn't you come back earlier to see me? Weren't you afraid that I would never see you again?" Qin Sheng replied in a hurry, "Grandma, I also want to come back earlier. Unfortunately, I lost my memory in the past 3 years. I can't remember anything. Otherwise, I would definitely come back earlier." The old lady then understood. After all, Zhu Weiguo and Zhu Qingwen hadn't had time to talk about many things in the morning. He didn't want to say too much, which would make the old lady feel too burdened. The old lady murmured to herself, "Oh, that's it. Why did you lose your memory?" Qin Sheng didn't want to talk about too many things, lest his grandmother overthink. He smiled and said, "I was just a little injured, but now I'm all right. I'm still the same Qin Sheng. I haven't changed at all. I'm not missing any arms or legs." After that, Qin Sheng took the initiative to stand up and gesture to the old lady, which was somewhat childish. The old lady said angrily, "What are you talking about? Don't talk nonsense in the future." Qin Sheng smiled mischievously and said, "Sheng, I won't talk about it anymore." At this moment, the atmosphere in the ward was very warm. Even the medical staff were somewhat moved. They really hadn't seen the old lady so happy from the bottom of her heart for a long time. But in this way, the old lady could also feel better. As for Qin Sheng, at this moment, he didn't have any scheming or shrewdness. In front of his grandmother, he seemed to be a child who hadn't grown up yet. He smiled very innocently, and even some of the words he said were quite childish. Qin Sheng continued, "Grandma, take care of yourself. You must listen to the doctor. I'll come to see you every day and tell you the people and things I've met in the past 3 years. In this way, you can get well soon." The old lady said quite seriously, "I'm not a child. I'll definitely listen to the doctor, and I'll attend your wedding with Ryu." Qin Sheng was very happy and laughed. Song Ryu knew that the old lady was most concerned about her and Qin Sheng's wedding. So she took the initiative to tell the old lady about the wedding preparation so that the old lady would be in a better mood. In a lounge outside the ward, because the door of the ward was not closed, the old lady and Qin Sheng's conversation in the ward were clearly heard, which made them sigh with emotion. They hadn't seen the old lady so happy for a long time. Zhu Qingwen couldn't help but say with emotion, "Our mother still likes Sheng her most. He was like this when he was a child. I didn't expect that after more than 20 years, he is still like this now. If my sister saw him, she would be so happy." Zhu Weigua shook his head and chuckled. This boy was very strange when he was a child. He could make the old man and the old lady laugh all the time. Some feelings are buried deep in the bones and won't change because of time. It's a pity that the old man didn't see Qin Sheng come back. He felt somewhat regretful. There are so many regretful things, and we can't do anything about them. For example, my sister will never come back, Zhu Qingwen said emotionally. Maybe it was because of the scene in the ward. Zhu Weigua looked calm and serious, but he replied with a murderous look, "But at least we got our revenge." Chapter 1168. For the Zhu family, the unexpected death of Qin Sheng's mother was a scar that could never be erased, but no one wanted to mention it. At that time, the Qin family was deeply involved in the whirlpool and almost used up all its power. The Zhu family also paid a price at that time. Otherwise, how could Elder Long stay dormant for so many years? For example, Old Master Zhu was stuck in a key position for 3 years, and it was not until later that he successfully reached the peak of his career. Back then, it could be said that both sides suffered great losses. The Qin family suffered great losses. Qin Chang'an lost his true love, Qin Changxing's career ended, and he became a monk. Old Master Qin was forbidden to enter the capital city for the rest of his life. In order to protect the young Qin Sheng, Old Master Qin could only take him to his hometown. Although the Zhu family didn't directly participate in the incident back then, they had still lost their most beloved daughter. In order to seek justice for his daughter, Old Master Zhu had been delayed for 3 years. If it weren't for a certain big shot persuading Old Master Zhu, perhaps Old Master Zhu would also have acted unscrupulously. Now, more than 20 years had passed. The Qin family had accumulated a lot under the low-key forbearance of Qin Chang'an. Otherwise, they would not have been able to build the aircraft carrier of the Chang and family. Mr. Ding had his own ambition. Didn't Qin Chang'an know that? Mr. Ding wanted something else, but Qin Chang'an had other things to consider. Qin Chang'an lost his true love. Although so many years had passed, he would not let it go. How could he not take revenge for his wife's death? That was why Qin Chang'an was so unscrupulous. He had to tie up enough important people on this aircraft carrier so that he could take revenge on the day of Mount Tai. Perhaps it was because Mr. Ding knew this that he left. However, man proposes, God disposes. Personal grudges were nothing in the course of history. As a giant in the capital industry, the Chang and family was bound to be punished as a warning to others. Elder Long seized this opportunity and was ready to hit the Qin family when they were down. He united with the other major shareholders of the Chang and family and wanted to kill the Qin family. However, what Elder Long and the others didn't expect was that they, too, were huge crocodiles and would be dealt with sooner or later. Otherwise, even with the help of the Zhu family and the Song family, how could the Qin family defeat Elder Long so easily? To put it bluntly, the Zhu family was the most important, because it was also the Zhu family's revenge. The Zhu family had endured for so many years, and the current Zhu family was no longer the Zhu family of the past. Old Master Zhu had been in a high position for many years, and had helped the Zhu family accumulate too many connections and resources. Zhu Weigua's meteoric rise in the military also made the Zhu family more confident. In addition, Zhu Changshun, this originally unremarkable son-in-law of the Zhu family, had finally made people have a whole new level of respect for him. Step by step, he seemed to be retracing the path that old Master Zhu had taken in the past. Now, he had even stepped into the circle that the vast majority of people could only hope to reach. The current Zhu family was the true towering tree. While the Qin family and Elder Long were locked in a stalemate, the Zhu family's attack was a sure kill. In the end, Elder Long paid the price for what he had done in the past. The river flows east for 30 years and west for 30 years. No one dared to say that they would be able to laugh in the end. The higher a great family stood, the more they were afraid of taking a wrong step and falling into the abyss. The Zhu family had been treading on thin ice for the past few years, and now they had finally exchanged it for the radiance of the sun. If the Qin family took a wrong step, they would be doomed. Elder Long, who was on the same path as the Qin family, thought that he had taken every step in history. However, he still took the wrong path. Otherwise, the Zhu family would not have such a chance. Everything was over. It was time for the dust to settle. In the end, it was Qin Sheng who cleaned up the mess. At this moment, in the lounge, Zhu Weigua and Zhu Qingwen looked calm, but everyone knew how much the Zhu family had sacrificed in order to wait for this day. Even if Zhu Weigua stood at the top of the pyramid of power, he did not dare to rashly take the initiative to take revenge. The Zhu family had been waiting for such an opportunity. The onlookers saw the game more clearly than the players. Old Master Song, who had always felt that something was wrong, suddenly realized that all of this might have been part of Qin Chang'an's plan. He had been laying out a trap, waiting for everyone to jump into it. In the end, be it the Zhu family, the Song family, Elder Long, or sixth uncle, they all quietly became Qin Chang'an's pawns. When he thought of this possibility, he did not speak for an hour. Qin Chang'an was risking his life to bring down Elder Long. He wondered if the Zhu family had thought of this. However, even if Zhu Weigua and the others had thought of this, they might still jump into the trap because it was all worth it. The heartwarming scene in the ward made Zhu Weigua and Zhu Qingwen feel emotional. In the past 3 years, the Zhu family had used too many resources and connections. Now, they finally got justice for Qin Sheng's mother and let everyone know that the Zhu family was not so easy to bully. However, Zhu Qingwen was not satisfied. That old thing is still alive, isn't he? He will die soon. Isn't it better to leave the rest to Qin Sheng? If we do it again, it will be a bit unreasonable, Zhu Weigua said calmly. The murderous aura on him finally disappeared. Just now, Zhu Weigua's powerful aura made Zhu Qingwen somewhat uncomfortable. Don't look at this big brother's amiable appearance in front of the Zhu family. Everyone could feel that kind of imposing aura without being angry, so all the juniors of the Zhu family were actually afraid of him. Not to mention what Zhu Weigua was like outside. Zhu Qingwen thought for a few seconds and said, "You're right. It seems more appropriate for Qin Sheng to do it himself." Zhu Weigua said calmly, "You don't have to worry about anything. I guess the Qin family already has a plan." Zhu Qingwen stopped talking. If it was possible, she would like to see the old thing off in person. At this time, Qin Sheng and Song Ryu came out of the ward. The old lady was still weak. Although she had endless things to talk to them, the doctor only gave her so much time. Otherwise, the old lady would not be able to bear it. Before leaving, Qin Sheng and Song Ryu promised the old lady that they would make time to visit her tomorrow. The old lady was satisfied. Today, the old lady was really happy. The smile on her face never disappeared. She didn't lie down on the bed until Qin Sheng and Song Ryu walked out of the ward. When they came out, Zhu Qingwen stood up with a smile and asked, "Did your grandma scold you?" Qin Sheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. He knew that his aunt said that on purpose. Zhu Qingwen chuckled and said, I knew it. Your grandmother was reluctant to scold you. Since you came back 3 years ago, your grandmother has never said anything harsh to you. She was afraid that you would suffer. She really loves you. Zhu Qingwen smiled and said, I knew it. Qin Sheng blamed himself as he said, I made Grandma worry about me. Zhu Qingwen glanced at Song Ruyu and then at Qin Sheng as she said, if you really want to reassure her, marry Ruyu and have a baby as soon as possible. Then she will be completely relieved. Song Ruyu was a little embarrassed. Qin Sheng said shamelessly, Auntie, isn't it fast to get married? But I can't be anxious about having a baby. Zhu Qingwen said angrily, You're so talkative. Zhu Weigua has also he walked over and said in a low voice, Both your grandmother and old Master Song are already so old. Maybe their last wish is to see you get married and have children with their own eyes. You'd better hurry up. What I'm most afraid of is that they won't see it. Although Zhu Weigua's words were direct, it was also the truth. Zhu Qingwen said in a hurry, Brother, don't rush them. Don't give them too much pressure. Zhu Weigua did not continue to say anything. He just patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and signaled Qin Sheng to follow him out with his eyes. After Qin Sheng followed his uncle out of the lounge, they walked to a lounge on the same floor where there were no patients. The guards also followed them here and quietly guarded outside the door. Zhu Weigua said straightforwardly, Don't you have anything to say to me? Qin Sheng was stunned for a moment, but then he understood what his uncle was talking about. Different from facing his eldest uncle Qin Chongqing, Qin Sheng still felt a little pressure when facing his uncle, who was in a high position. Sometimes he did not dare to look at his uncle directly. You little fox, don't you know what's on your mind in front of your uncle? Finally, Qin Sheng confessed, Uncle, you already know? It's such a big thing. If I don't know, how much trouble will you make? Zhu Weigua said in a sharp tone. When did you know? Qin Sheng replied truthfully, 3 years ago before Lin Su went to the United States. At that time, she did not intend to tell me and planned to give birth to the child alone. Someone else told me. Nonsense. You are really nonsense. Zhu Weigua said with a headache. When he knew this, fortunately, Qin Sheng was not beside him. Otherwise, he would have scolded Qin Sheng severely. Qin Sheng was silent and did not speak. Zhu Weigua continued to ask, After you came back, did you contact Lin Su? Did you see the child? Not yet. Maybe I feel too guilty for them and don't know how to face them. Moreover, they are still in the United States now. I have not had time to see them. Qin Sheng sighed. Zhu Weigua did not know what to do about this matter. Therefore, after seeing Qin Sheng today, he could not wait to ask Qin Sheng what was going on in case the Song family found out about it. It would be really troublesome. Zhu Weigua frowned and said, How are you going to deal with it? Are you going to hide it from them? Do you know that once you can't hide it, there will be no end to it? Qin Sheng said slowly, Ryu knows. We have talked about this matter. What? Ryu already knows? Zhu Weigua was a little shocked. He really did not expect this. Qin Sheng continued to say, She knew it 2 years ago. It was my uncle who told her. When we met in Chengdu, we also talked about this matter. Uncle, you don't have to worry about it. At this time, Zhu Weigua, who had been frowning, finally relaxed. However, he was very puzzled and asked, You talked about it? How did you talk about it? What did Ryu say? Therefore, Qin Sheng repeated all the things he had talked about with Song Ruyu in Chengdu to his uncle. After listening to it, Zhu Weigua was stunned. He did not know what to say for a moment. After a long time, Zhu Weigua let out a long sigh and said, Do the other people in the Song family know? Qin Sheng did not hide it. Not yet. Zhu Weigua felt a headache again. He felt that this matter was really more troublesome than work. He really did not know what to say. He had no choice but to say, You deal with it yourselves. I don't care. After saying this, Zhu Weigua turned around and walked out of the ward. Qin Sheng murmured to himself, Uncle, are you giving up on me? Chapter 1169. Zhu Weigua didn't mean to give up on Qin Sheng. He just felt that this matter was too troublesome. His nephew had too many love debts. As an uncle, he he couldn't pay them back. Qin might as well deal with it himself. At worst, he would show up in the end and clean up the mess. At least now. It was not good for him to show up, not to mention that the worst had not happened yet. After all, Ryu had already known about this matter and reached a compromise with Qin, acquiescing to the existence of Lin Su and the child. Now, the most worrying thing was that the Song family knew about it. If the Song family knew about it, they might do something. At that time, it would depend on how Qin and Ryu would deal with it. If they really couldn't deal with it, the elders could only do it. In fact, if Qin and Ryu knew about it after they got married, the situation would not be so bad. Now the two children were married. No matter how angry the Song family was, they might divorce them immediately. Even if they divorced, Ryu might not agree. Then the Qin family and the Zhu family could deal with Lin Su and the child. For example, they could make them go abroad and never come back. Qin also promised not to see them again. The Song family's face was saved. This matter would be reduced to a small one. As time went by, it would be gradually forgotten. But if they knew about it before they got married, the situation would be a bit complicated. The worst result was that this matter would be known by everyone, and the three families would lose face in the end. In any case, they could only blame Qin, who made the Qin family and the Zhu family feel sorry for the Song family. Now he finally understood why Qin Chongqing took the initiative to tell him about it. One possibility was that if Qin came back and the Song family knew about it, the Zhu family and the Qin family would bear the responsibility together. Another possibility was that if Qin didn't come back, at least there was still Qin's flesh and blood in this world, which could also make the Zhu family feel relieved. Zhu Weiwa didn't bother to guess about this. Now that it had come to this, he would see. Not long after Zhu Weiwa left, Qin also came out of the lounge. He estimated that his uncle was really angry this time. He could only blame himself for hiding this matter, so that it became a big problem now. Fortunately, Song Ryu had acquiesced to it, but the Song family still had to face it. It was better to keep this matter a secret, but if the Song family really knew, then the Qin family and the Zhu family would really offend the Song family. Qin felt a headache when he thought about it. But if he had told his uncle and aunt back then, perhaps their suggestion would have been for Lin Su to abort the child, and they would have done their best to compensate Lin Su or the Lin family. However, Lin Su did not want him to know from the beginning. Perhaps she would not want him to know for the rest of her life. She only wanted him to give birth to the child alone and raise it by himself. She did not have any other thoughts, nor did she want to use the child to threaten Qin or the Qin family. Everyone knew that Lin Su was not that kind of person. Qin knew it even better. If Shui Qingyan had not told him, how could he have known? At that time, the child was already a few months old. Qin had no other choice. Therefore, Qin could not be blamed for this. He could only blame fate for making fools of him. When Qin came out, Zhu Weiwa had already left. Zhu Qingwen walked over and frowned as she said, "What did your uncle talk to you about? Why did he look so bad when he left?" Qin shook his head awkwardly and said, Nothing. Tell me the truth. Did you make your uncle angry again?" Zhu Qingwen asked with a serious face. Qin quickly denied it. "No, small aunt, don't think too much." At this moment, Qin was muttering in his heart. It seemed that small aunt did not know about this. Otherwise, he would have scolded her again. Song Ryu just went to the bathroom and happened to come out at this time. Qin dared not say anything more to small aunt. Although Song Ryu chose to acquiesce to this matter, Qin still did not want to mention it in front of her, in case Song Ryu was angry or in a bad mood. Although Song Ryu was so generous, it did not mean that she did not care about this matter. After saying goodbye to his grandmother, Qin promised to come back tomorrow. After walking out of the hospital, Song Ryu was going to meet her friend. After sending her there, Qin left. Today, Qin had other important things to do. Two strange guests came to Old Master Sihiyuan today. Although they were strange, they were not strangers. Old Master, he had known about them for a long time and had dealt with them many times in the past few years. However, he did not expect that they would come here one day. However, Old Master, he did not show up, because the two guests were not here for him, but for Qin Sheng. This was originally a place where he could live comfortably for thousands of years. Who knew that it would become a place for Qin Sheng to receive guests now? Old Master, he could not help but laugh, but he did not think much about it. Perhaps Qin Sheng wanted him to be the gatekeeper, because the two were not strangers, but the two trusted subordinates of Old Master Long, who had been in charge of the affairs of the world. Old Master, he felt satisfied that the two guests, who were over 50 years old, could condescend to come to his place. After all, even now, the He family was not as good as them. Old Master, he had been drinking tea in the study. Through the window, he could see the two guests sitting under the pavilion. However, they looked a little restless, probably feeling uneasy. Old Master, he chuckled. This storm started more than 20 years ago. Until today, the Qin family had the last laugh. Not to mention that the Qin family had the help of allies such as the Zhu family and the Song family. After all, Old Master Long also had the support of many people. Allies were a kind of reflection of one's strength, which was the accumulation of generations of a family for decades. It was a nice day today. Sitting under the pavilion and enjoying the scenery and drinking tea was such a pleasant thing. Unfortunately, the two big shots under the pavilion were not in such a mood. They came here quietly to meet the young master of the Qin family, which was a risky move. After all, if Old Master Long knew about it, they would die miserably. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Old Master Long was still Old Master Long as he lived. Although Old Master Long's words were not very useful now, as long as he was still alive, they could not be too high profile. Secondly, they did not know how the young master of the Qin family would blackmail them. However, in order to protect themselves and inherit Old Master Long's legacy, they could only do this kind of ungrateful thing. After all, nothing was more important than benefits. In the face of benefits, everyone would be selfish. The two big shots were the middle-aged men who had schemed against Cripple Tang. One was gentle, and the other was full of Jianghu aura. Now, they not only schemed against Cripple Tang, but also Old Master Long, but they did not know whether they would succeed or not. However, as long as the Qin clan cooperated with them from the inside, this matter would not be far from the truth. They had been here for half an hour, but they still did not see the young master of the Qin family. This made them somewhat angry, but they could do nothing about it. Although they did not know where this place was, it was obviously safe enough for the young master of the Qin family to choose to meet here. The gentleman frowned and said in an angry tone, "What does Qin Sheng mean? He made us wait for so long. Does he not take us seriously?" The other middle-aged man, who was full of Jianghu aura, replied calmly, "We have to lower our heads under the eaves. Now we have a favor to ask of him. It's just half an hour. Even if we have to wait for a whole day, we can still wait." The gentle middle-aged man sneered and said, "You can stand it, but I can't. At the worst, we can continue to fight. Even if the Qin family has the help of the Zhu family, they may not be able to take advantage of us." The man who was full of Jianghu aura said with interest, "You forget that our current opponent is not the Qin family, but Old Master Long. It is not easy for the Qin family to deal with us, but it is not difficult for Old Master Long to deal with us. Everything we have today is given by Old Master Long. Although he can't hold on for a few days now." At this point, the gentlemanly man was completely silent. This was their biggest danger at the moment. Fortunately, Old Master Long only suspected and did not take action. However, once Old Master Long made up his mind, they would have no chance to resist. Therefore, before Old Master Long made up his mind, they had to make him die without a burial place. They had no choice but to take action. While they were quarreling, Qin Sheng walked into Old Master He Sihiyuan. He happened to see this scene. Chapter 1170. Chapter 1465. Chapter 1465. What a wild way right now. Elder Long, who was lying on his sickbed in Beidei, would never have thought that just as he was unwilling to admit defeat and was racking his brains to prepare for a comeback, the two confidants that he had painstakingly cultivated had already betrayed him and were now making a deal with his enemy. If Elder Long knew about this, he would probably spit out blood and die on the spot. There was no other way. Elder Long would fight to the death with the Qin family for his own selfish desires, but the others didn't have any blood feud with the Qin family. Why should they die for Elder Long's hatred? Don't tell me that you, Elder Long, aren't you going to reflect on why you lost in this storm? That was all the big shots who supported him thought that this was a losing deal. They paid a heavy price and offended a powerful enemy, but they didn't get much benefit in the end. Who would be willing to do such a losing deal? Therefore, these two men took the risk out of desperation. They couldn't blame anyone. Among the 4 successors of Elder Long, the one who ranked first was now staying in Hong Kong and hadn't returned yet. He almost lost the right to inherit because he had to take the blame for many people. He might not be able to come back in this lifetime. Then there was Lame Zheng and these 2 middle-aged men. However, before that person was disqualified, no one dared to challenge his position, whether it was the lame old Zheng or the 2 that were present today. Almost everyone had already determined that he was the most suitable successor to Elder Long. Even the 2 of them thought so. It was a pity that this mess between Elder Long and the Qin family ruined the future of this successor, which led to the current situation of the 3 tigers fighting for the throne. However, it was obvious that the lame Lao Zheng was not as smart as the other 2. He really believed Master Long's words and tried his best to kill Qin Sheng. Didn't he know that even if he blamed Master Long for this, he could still escape by luck? He was too naive. He didn't even know what time it was. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, these 2 men finally made this choice. The gentle and refined middle-aged man was called Feng Xiangru. This was a name that was full of wisdom. Feng Xiangru was also a descendant of a prestigious family. However, his family was relatively low-key, and he was one of Elder Long's biggest supporters. Feng Xiangru was very knowledgeable. He studied history at Peking University and later studied philosophy in Europe. How could such a person not be smart? In contrast, the middle-aged man with a strong sense of society was very different from Feng Xiangru in terms of background and experience. One was an elite, the other was a grassroots. His name was Yang Yaozu. From a name, one could tell what his family meant by giving him this name. They hoped that he would be able to bring honor to his ancestors in the future. However, his father's generation was also taking a risk. They weren't afraid of crushing him with such a big name. He didn't know if he had the fate to carry this name. But looking back now, Yang Yaozu really didn't let his old father down. From an ordinary youth in a small town in Jiangxi, he became such a big shot today. His journey could be said to be full of hardships. Yang Yaozu didn't have much interaction with Elder Long before he was 30 years old. However, he had been a chauffeur for an important figure for 10 years. It was common knowledge that chauffeurs and secretaries were trusted confidants of these important figures. Yang Yaozu didn't have much contact with Elder Long before he was 30. However, he had been a driver for a big shot for 10 years. Everyone knew that drivers and secretaries were absolutely trusted by these big shots. But on the other hand, it was also Yang Yaozu's ability that made this big shot particularly admire him. Yang Yaozu's conduct was meticulous, and his handling of other matters was even more flawless. Therefore, after that big shot retired, he allowed Yang Yaozu to start working with Elder Long. From then on, Yang Yaozu became acquainted with Elder Long. With the support of that big shot and his own abilities, Yang Yaozu quickly rose to his current position. Therefore, after that big shot retired, Yang Yaozu started to enter the room. Since then, he had a relationship with Elder Long relying on this big shot support and his own ability. Yang Yaozu quickly rose to the position he had today. Then the biggest credit for maintaining the relationship must be the benefits. While Feng Xiangru and Yang Yaozu were quarreling, Qin Sheng appeared quietly. He deliberately stopped at the door of the corridor and looked at the 2 big shots with a smile. Although Feng Xiangru was gentle, he was not as steady as Yang Yaozu this time. He was supposed to be more steady, and Yang Yaozu was more anxious, but the reality was the opposite. It could only be said that no matter how good one's family background was, one was destined not to have such a state of mind. Yang Yaozu had been a driver for a big shot and had dealt with too many things. If he didn't have such a state of mind, He might have been fired by that big shot long ago. How could he be pushed to Elder Long's side? At this time, Yang Yaozu found someone standing in the corridor. He looked over and found Qin Sheng was already there. Yang Yaozu immediately looked at Feng Xiangru. Feng Xiangru also saw Qin Sheng. He quietly squinted and stared at Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng also walked over slowly. There was no one else behind him. At this moment, there were only the three of them near the pavilion. The others were waiting outside. Besides, this was Yilao's territory. Qin Sheng was not afraid of anything. When Qin Sheng walked into the pavilion, Feng Xiangru said in an unfriendly tone, "I didn't expect the young master of the Qin family to have the habit of eavesdropping. One eye-opener." According to age, Feng Xiangru and Yang Yaozu were people of the same generation as Qin Sheng's uncles. So Qin Sheng smiled and said, "Brother Feng, I don't quite understand. I really don't want to disturb you. How can it be called eavesdropping?" Yang Yaozu looked at Feng Xiangru and signaled him to calm down. There was no need to be so confrontational. He said calmly, "Young Master Qin, I've heard about you for a long time. Today, I finally get to meet you. Please take a seat." Yang Yaozu's trick of turning the guest into the host was really familiar. Qin Sheng didn't think much. He sat down calmly and poured himself a cup of tea naturally. Then he said politely, "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting." Yang Yaozu said calmly, "It's such an elegant place. It's a good thing to enjoy the scenery." Qin Sheng smiled and said, "The scenery here is really good, but it's not suitable for a young man like me." "Ha ha. It seems that it's not easy to meet young Master Qin today. But now young Master Qin is in charge of all the affairs of the Qin family. We can only trouble young Master Qin," Yang Yaozu said calmly. Qin Sheng replied, "It's really not easy to meet you. We almost didn't have a chance to meet each other. Once was in Ningbo, and the other time was in the Sea of Bamboo in South Chuan. Fortunately, I was lucky. Otherwise, I would have died in your hands." Feng Xiangru sneered and said, "Young Master Qin, you must be joking. We have nothing to do with these two things. The first time was the old man, and the other time was the damned cripple. We didn't know anything." Qin Sheng didn't want to be too aggressive. He replied, "I'm just saying, but I have to thank you. At least this time in the Sea of Bamboo in South Chuan, without your help, I wouldn't have gotten out of danger so easily." Yang Yaozu followed the topic and said, "Young Master Qin, you are too polite. This is just a greeting gift for the Qin family. Otherwise, the Qin family wouldn't have felt our sincerity, and there wouldn't be this meeting today, right?" Qin Sheng laughed and said, "Brother Yang, you are honest. I like to deal with people like you. After all, we are opponents. When opponents meet, they either fight or make peace. What are we doing today?" When Feng Xiangru heard young Master Qin saying that he liked to deal with people like Brother Yang, he snorted. Obviously, he was somewhat dissatisfied with Qin Sheng's words. Was it for him to hear? He was not a reckless person, but he felt that the Qin family had gone too far this time. Based on their strength and qualifications, Qin Changxing should have come forward to talk to them in person. Even if Qin Changxing was unwilling to come forward, it should have been Gongsun, the old fox. Everyone knew that Gongsun was Qin Chang'an's henchman and also the watchdog of the Qin family. Why did Qin Sheng, the little bastard, come forward in the end? It was totally because the Qin family didn't take them seriously and sent Qin Sheng to deal with them casually. That was why he was a little angry. If it were someone else, he would not have such an attitude. Yang Yaozu said directly, "This place is not suitable for us to fight, is it? Besides, we may not be young Master Qin's opponents. I know that young Master Qin's skills are excellent. As for making peace, it seems that we can't represent the old man, so we can only say that we are cooperating when we meet." Cooperating? Qin Sheng laughed involuntarily. At this time, Yang Yaozu was still putting on airs, which made him feel a little ridiculous. Yang Yaozu said lightly, "Yes, it is cooperation." Qin Sheng slightly leaned forward and said, "Brother Yang, what kind of cooperation?" Yang Yaozu took a look at Feng Xiangru. After a moment of silence, he looked at Qin Sheng and said, "Young Master Qin, what we're talking about today is more important. I don't know if young Master Qin can represent the Qin family. If not, we still hope to talk to your eldest uncle about it. After all, it concerns our life and death. Brother Yang, what do you mean? Are you looking down on the Qin family or me? Am I not qualified to come? Qin Sheng asked back. However, Qin Sheng could understand what they said. After all, he was indeed a little young in front of them. He could only be said to be a junior. Yang Yaozu immediately replied, "That's not what we mean. We're just cautious." Qin Sheng was not long-winded and said directly, "Since I can come, I can naturally represent the Qin family. Now I have the final say in the Qin family. Can you say it now?" Hearing this, Feng Xiangru was a little doubtful. He asked again, "Qin Sheng, can you really represent the Qin family?" Qin Sheng said unhappily, "Do I have to say the same thing twice?" Yang Yaozu could feel Qin Sheng's momentum. He said directly, "Okay, we believe you." Yang Yaozu also thought about this problem. Although this time the Qin family sent Qin Sheng was after all the heir of the Qin family. As long as they told Qin Sheng about this, he would definitely discuss it with the elders of the Qin family after going back and finally make a decision. This was the same principle. At this time, Feng Xiangru also lost his initial mood. After all, the main purpose today was to reach a consensus with the Qin family. The Qin family would get what they deserved. They would get rid of their own crisis and get the biggest benefits at the same time. Both parties sat upright and still. Qin Sheng looked at Yang Yaozu and Feng Xiangru solemnly. Yang Yaozu and Feng Xiangru looked at each other. In the end, they decided that Yang Yaozu would speak. Yang Yaozu said slowly, "We'll help the Qin family kill Elder Long Ugg." Hearing this sentence, Qin Sheng did not expect these two to be so wild. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.